It's the show, and it's on right now. Hey, welcome to the Sunday Show After Dark. I'm your host, Forrest Valkai. I'm joined today by the marvelous and brilliant Dr. Aaron Adair. How are you doing today, my friend?
I am doing quite peachy. I am good. And Forrest, I hope the world is treating you very well.
It's been rough. It's been a rough semester. It's been kicking my butt in ways that my butt has not been kicked in quite some time, but I'm very happy. I'm learning a lot of things. If it wasn't this difficult, I wouldn't be learning new stuff, and that's really cool. I just got my absolute ass handed to me over a test over carbohydrate chemistry, and it was, oh my glob, dude. It was wild. I swear to people just use the word animer as a filler word in that field. They just it's just nonsense. It's just anytime they want to say the word like, they just say animer. It's crazy. We've got a great show for everybody tonight. Esoteric science babble aside, the show will be full of esoteric science babble because you've got a biologist and a physicist here who are ready to take your calls about science. If you are a creationist, if you don't believe in evolution, if you believe in a young Earth or a young universe, if you don't believe in the Big Bang, if you don't accept the age of the Earth being 4.6 billion years old, if you don't accept the speed of light, if you are the recession rate of galaxies as evidences for the age of the place in which you live, if you think the word kinds means absolutely anything in biology, if you trust the austerous words, is that a word? The words of answers in Genesis as being any kind of meaningful or true, if you want to argue about sex and gender, if you want to argue about black holes and dark matter, if you think that science doesn't know what we think it knows and that the science is just another religion to compete with the Bible or any of these other things that we hear on a regular basis on this channel, this is your chance to call in and talk to two scientists about it, two people who spend admittedly too much time learning about this stuff so that we can teach at the illustrious University of the internet. The number on the bottom of the screen, 720-619-2288, or use the web link in the description to call in over them internets. If you are outside of the US, you can do that. And as well as just general theists, if you believe in a God and you want to tell us why, if you believe that the Bible is indeed the good book, if you believe that Aaron and I are in need of salvation, if you believe that there is a heaven and a hell and you want to protect the 20 to 30,000 people who watch these shows on average every week, this is your chance. Pick up that phone and save some souls. That number again, 720-619-2288, or use the web link down in the description. Call us right now. We'll get you on with our call screener, Stephanie, who is waiting to take your call and talk to you and learn what you're all about and then slap you into the queue so that we can start talking to you as well. And you can preach your gospels in front of tens of thousands of people who are waiting to be convinced, waiting for new evidence, waiting for new reasons to believe the things that you believe, or just to see if it's even worth believing in the first place. With that, we already have some calls coming in, but we still have lines open. So while we wait for them, what are you working on right now, dude?
Well, the first thing I was going through was processing if austerous was a word. As far as I can tell, no, but I would like us, as much as possible, to promote so much science literacy that Answers in Genesis has to go into austerity measures because their funding is dried up as they realize just how much of a clown show ultimately their work is.
I'm looking up because I know austerity is definitely where I was coming from, and I'm literally just Googled austerity as an adjective. Austere is the word I was looking for, not austerus or austerius. Just austere is the word. See, I'm a biologist, not a linguist, y'all. I don't know what the words are. Unlike our God King Donald Trump, I don't have the best words. Oh, by the way, that's another thing. If you're in the cult of MAGA and you want to call in and tell us why starving children to score political points so that you can take away healthcare from millions of people is a good idea, take your time right now. I have found it's really cool. If you ever want to know a true thing about Donald Trump, just say anything you want about him. Literally anything at all. And when a bunch of white people take a break from gargling his wrinkly old ball bag to call you gay and say a bunch of Nazi shit, that's when you know you've said something true. That's when it's correct. It's like a crystal ball. It's amazing. Oh, man.
All right. But to more seriously answer your question about what I'm working on, combination, of course, my regular 9 to 5 job stuff. I recently just got a book. Yes. So a big chunk of what I do in my physics research is specifically in education research, and the vast majority of our data, unfortunately, comes from late teens, 20-year-olds, high school and college students, because they're the ones who are willing to sit down in a physics class and take a test. Unfortunately, when I try doing that with 3-year-olds, I get calls from the police, among other problems, and they're not very good at answering multiple choice questions. So one of the books I just got in the mail today is this one, What Babies Know by Elizabeth Spelke. My advisor at MIT kept mentioning this, and I realized I should probably put this into my brain and figure out how we might leverage what this is concentrating to see, hey, how much of our physics stuff can we look at baby stuff? Because the very, very little I have seen about like physics intuitions is that elementary school kids don't have quite the same intuitions that high school kids do. And in some ways, they're slightly more Newtonian in their thinking, at least on some questions, which to me says, if they're more correct back then, does that mean we need to change how we're teaching and teach basic physics at a younger age rather than waiting until it's calcified into this structure that we're now trying to hammer at for the next decade of them coming to our classrooms?
Yeah, I think that's great. Like, it's like I don't think there's ever any kind of like downside to teaching these hard sciences earlier. And even like, what people will call soft science. I hate the term hard science, soft science, but I think there's no downside to like introducing these basic concepts, because like teaching physics to first grade doesn't have to be like drawing out crazy formulas. Literally, if they can just get their head around what gravity is, like that's a big concept for kids. And like leading into like bigger things later, we talk about planets, talking about stars, talking about how cars work and like why crashes are so dangerous. Like you can use a ton of lessons in here, because like wear your seatbelt, it keeps you safe. That's not that that's a good lesson, but like what the fuck does that mean? Why? You know what I mean? But if they understand momentum at that age and you're teaching them like, hey, look, notice how when I stop this thing, everything inside of it keeps moving. Wear your seatbelt, it keeps you safe. Like they get that now.
Well, the thing is, though, they get that, but they don't understand physically what's going on, and that's the big thing that I'm trying to hammer on with this stuff, because the conception that people have naturally is closer to what you read in Aristotle or medieval thinkers, and even a young Isaac Newton. We have like his waste book, and we see like, oh, even Newton didn't know what the hell he was talking about in 1660. He had to Newton himself. I'm going to turn that into a verb to Newton.
Just trying to get it out there in the ether so it starts picking up.
Yes, yeah.
I'm
bringing fetch back along with other things.
Fetch. That's excellent. Well, let's see how many dope science-y expletives and whatnot we can start incorporating into our conversations with our first call. If you're ready, I'm down to jump right in, yeah?
I'm good. Let's go.
Right on. Let's talk to Alex, pronoun she and they, calling in from Wallaby Art, who wants to talk about energy as a proof of divinity. Alex, you were on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing today?
Doing pretty good. You?
Never had a bad day.
Hunky dory.
Yep. All right. So it's kind of a little different because I grew up super fundamentalist Christian. I deconstructed out of that. I've had to relearn some science, and but one thing that really I could not shake is my personal experience with some sort of divinity, and seeing and learning about energy work in chi and feeling it. I feel like that enough is proof of something else out there.
Aaron, do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Well, you're talking about qi, so the concept that comes up in like traditional Chinese medicine, and some martial artists will refer to this, or any given episode of Naruto. But how are you understanding it, and what's your experience with this? Just so I understand how you're conceptualizing this.
So basically, like energy work, Tai Chi, all of those things, and everything that I've seen about it too, when doing research, has shown we can't prove this exists, but it has benefits when people use it. And I've experienced that too. I've experienced just feeling better after energy work, physically feeling like pressure in my hands when I'm doing it. So it's just, that's the personal experience for me.
Okay. So there's always, of course, the issue when it comes to those sorts of things is how much expectation comes along with it. And very often when we're trying to do a scientific experiment, we realize, hey, if we come in and we know what the result should be or what we want the result to be, we are more willing to interpret things or notice things or imagine the things that are more conforming to that hypothesis. So we want to try to blind things. And I remember a study that was looking at something at least adjacent to this. So have you ever heard of therapeutic touch?
Yeah.
Okay. So just for the sake of the audience to explain it, the idea that was taught to a bunch of nurses is that without even touching a patient, that moving your hands above a person's body can push around their energy or their energy fields in a way that can try to perform some level of pain relief or healing. A lot of nurses, saying positive things about it, patients saying positive things about it. And I don't remember the names, but if memory serves, there was an 8-year-old girl who came up with a rather straightforward way of testing this. And it was basically to have a sheet of cardboard and a couple of holes to stick one's hands through. And the idea is that the practitioner would not be able to see anything, and they would put their hands through. And the tester person would have their hand over either the right hand or left hand, and the practitioner had to guess based on the sensations from therapeutic touch whether their hand was over the right or the left. And once that person was blinded, when the practitioner was blinded, their ability to guess was no better than chance. So they went from, I'm able to heal people, to, I can't even tell whether your hand is above my left or right hand any better than a coin flip. And this study, by the way, I'm mentioning, was actually published. It was actually went through the peer review process. So I think it might be the world record for the youngest scientist publication ever, but I don't want to hold to that without triple checking. But as you can imagine, hey, that's a simple design. It does the blinding process that you would want any good scientist to do, and the results, unfortunately, came back rather negative. And that's my understanding, where as so far as we could test things like chi, therapeutic touch, things like that, once you do the blinding, the effect goes away.
Okay, but the thing is that is in between two people. I'm talking about like just personally doing it. I'm not sure about how it connects with other people, and if someone else is doing it, I'm skeptical about that. But when it's just me personally, I have felt that.
So my question would be,
how
would you? I'm sorry if you had something to go off of. I don't want to interrupt you.
No. I think you're going to go down the same route. Please go for it, Forrest.
Yeah, I was just going to go down the list of like there are a ton of things that are pseudoscience. Many of which I think, Alex, you would agree are pseudoscience, that are billed as performing the same services. There's acupuncture and crystal therapy and reflexology and whatever the hell the one with sound waves is, and the one with the different wavelengths of light therapy, and all these different things, Reiki and chakras and all these different ideas of different ways of manipulating energy, whatever the hell that's supposed to mean in any given circumstance. And every single one of them have people just like you who claim that they feel so much better afterwards. And they can't all be true, because we know by scientific experimentation that so many of them simply are not. However, they could all share the same unifying characteristic, which is just the placebo effect. You do some sort of a ritual, you get yourself in the right sort of headspace, you're basically doing a form of guided meditation, it calms you down, it centers your mind, it makes you feel good. And then you associate that good, calm, relaxed, level-headed feeling and the placebo effect of expecting whatever kind of healing property to come along with it, the same way with the sugar pill, right? You combine all those sensations together and attribute them to this one thing. So what reason do I have to accept that this chi, this energy manipulation, whatever it is that you're talking about, is any different from any kind of pseudoscience that you and I would agree is pseudoscience that boasts the same positive health effects for a completely different reason?
Well, you could personally like feel exactly what I'm talking about. Like if you like scrunch your hands, there's a few like recess games that I've seen people do too, where it's like you push your hands together and the other person pushes them out, and you can feel like the pressure in between. So I'm basically just wondering, because I'm sort of looking to be proven wrong here too. Do you know of, because I've researched and I can't find it, do you know why that happens? Is the like because you can feel that pressure, and I've tried searching for it and I am coming up short.
Can you feel that pressure when you are not looking at the other person, like Aaron was talking about a minute ago? Like when you cover this up and they can't see the people, they don't feel that same energy proximity. Like, is that a thing that you've tested?
Well, it's not, because it's you could close your eyes and you do that. Where you could also even just like push your hands with your knees and push them out, and then you can feel that pressure there. And it doesn't matter.
So I understand. You said pushing your hands with your knees. Are you saying like isometric force, like you put pressure with a muscle, and then when you release that muscle, you still feel something there? Is that what you're talking about?
Maybe. Okay, what's that? Because that's what I'm looking for, is what is the thing for that?
I want to understand. Yeah, I just want to understand that that's what you're talking about, because there is a word for that. So like, are you talking like if I were to press my fists together like this, trying to press my hands through each other, when I let go, I still feel that pressure in my hands and my chest and my arms? Like, is that what you're talking about? Or are you talking about no physical contact at all, and then you feel something anyway?
The physical contact, and then after.
Okay, yes.
But the thing is that you can either let go of that really quick, or you can force yourself to keep that for longer. Is
right.
Why
it's like, and the longer you do it, you probably get more extreme results. That's called the Constam phenomenon. And it's actually something that a lot of people have done when they were kids. And you may not remember, if you've ever stood in a doorway and you try to press your arms out into the doorway for a while, and then when you step out of the doorway, your arms seem to float up by themselves. Everybody can try this. Very, very rarely does it not work. But when you have a skeletal muscle, which is any muscle that's directly attached to your skeleton, not like a smooth muscle like your organs or a cardiac muscle or anything, but like you take a skeletal muscle and just flex it a lot and like press against something that isn't gonna move. and you're doing what's called isometric exercise when you're doing that. And then when you release it, that muscle is still partially engaged because of the ways muscles work. Like all those ions are still there. Those filaments that are still trying to work are still trying to work. And you end up with the muscle seeming to kind of behave on its own. And that sounds a lot like what you're describing. And this is a really cool thing. Like it's a party game for kids that's pretty popular, making your arms feel like they're floating. It's actually the subject of research right now for like Parkinson's disease and things like that, because understanding how we resist that force of muscles trying to work on their own tells us a lot about how to treat, neurological diseases like that. But that's what it sounds like you're describing right now is just the Constam phenomenon. If you want to look it up, it's KHONSTAMM, I believe. I'll double check right now.
Yeah, I never compared this to that before because I've heard of that in the doorway and stuff like that.
Yes.
But
I've got it right here.
Totally
I'm putting the Wikipedia article. I'm putting the Wikipedia article in the chat right now for anybody who wants to look it up. Yeah, it's KOHNSTAMM. Some German motherfucker with a complicated ass last name. But yeah, that sounds what you're describing. And as far as the feeling energy the way that Aaron was describing with therapeutic touch and whatnot, that's actually something that I'm familiar with as well. I used to believe in that stuff when I was a kid. I was raised pagan, and so I was raised to believe that I could channel my energy into someone and heal them of things. And I was taught that I was going to be a great could do healing magic because I had purple energy in my aura. These were real words that human beings said to me as a child. And
and that's part of the reason that I wanted to call when you were here too, because I know that was you have experience with that.
Yeah, the question is will you feel this if you don't already believe in it? And the answer usually is no. Or if you do feel something, you may feel someone's heat, someone's body heat when they're really close to you. You may feel anticipation, knowing that, if everybody's had a, evil, sibling, I'm not touching you, but you swear you can feel it anyway because you're thinking about them right there next to you. And you can also turn that same sensation into a positive thing if you're I'm not touching you, but I'm putting my energy into you, and you can feel this, hand near you, and your body just imagines what it might be like to feel it, and you feel this tingling in your skin. These are all things that are really just a practice in mindfulness and focus. And again, the placebo effect, which is something that we see with Reiki and acupuncture and sugar pills and aromatherapy and essential oils and every other kind of pseudoscientific alternative medicine out there. I'm going to do this thing and you're going to feel better. And so people do the thing, and then their mind is so focused on it that they trick themselves into feeling a little bit better. And it doesn't actually treat disease, but it definitely treats being in a bad headspace. And that is a lot of the times as valuable. So it sounds like that's what you're talking about here.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Let me throw in one other thing as well, because Forrest, were talking about if you don't believe in it, you may not feel it, but there's also feelings that people have even though they don't want to believe it and they know it's not rational. Alex, are you familiar with phantom limb syndrome?
Oh yes.
Because I've heard these stories of such and such person loses an arm, loses a leg, but can still feel pain or tightness or that it itches. And of course, there's no. If their arm is missing and their right arm feels itchy, there's nothing there to scratch. So it's just the most annoying thing in the world. They know it's not there. They can see there's no arm, but the itching is still felt there. So it's kind of crazy. And strangely enough, there are therapies for that using mirrors. You basically have a mirror, so you're looking at the reflection of your left hand as if it's your right, and then by stretching your left arm, you feel the relief in your right arm that doesn't exist. Key thing is brains are weird, and the easiest person in the world to fool is yourself, because your brain is going to do just about anything to make this world kind of sort of make sense, even when it's nonsense.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm gonna still do it, but in just the fact that it is understanding that it's that Constam's phenomenon. Because it's fun, it feels fun. It's like stimming. I have ADHD, so whatever. But yeah, that was sort of like the last straw for me to say, yeah, no, I don't longer believe in that. So
there's no
shame
shame in like
caller.
well, thank you. There's no shame in like doing these practices of mindfulness in ways that like ground you and help you in like a meditative way. People do yoga and shit like that. It doesn't have to be a magical spiritual experience. If this is something that just kind of gives you something to do during the day, it keeps your muscles healthy, it keeps your joints active, it keeps you in a good rhythm. That's like fuck yeah, do that. Just don't believe it's magical. That's all I care about. That's all I want you to do.
Okay.
Alex.
Yeah, that's the switch that I needed right there. So yeah.
Sweet. All right. Have an awesome rest of your day, Alex. I appreciate your call.
All right,
sure.
you guys too.
For sure. Bye-bye.
All right.
That's what this show is all about, y'all.
Yeah, I did a quick bit of research. I found the person you're talking about. She wasn't 8; she was 11 years old when the study was published. Her name is Amy Rosa, and the publishing was done in JAMA back in 1998. The study's older than I realized.
That's crazy.
But yeah, I don't know what she's up to more recently, but obviously she's contributed to science before I ever did. So.
And that was such a landmark study too, if I remember correctly. Like that is the reason why we don't teach therapeutic touch in nursing schools anymore, because it used to be a thing, and then like that study, and then a series, like everyone was like, "Oh shit!" and they started looking into it for real, and it fell apart veritably overnight.
At the very least, I'm on the JAMA website, and the paper has 141 citations, and I don't know how normal that is in medicine. At least to me, that's a lot.
That's a lot. That is a lot. Goodness. Right. Let's take a look at some more things. We've got a couple more people on the line here. Do you have one that you like in particular? I'm looking at line number 4, the left number 4.
I'm not looking at any of them at the moment. I'd have to log in. So please roll the die as you see fit.
Okay, I'm going to go with, actually, you know what? I think this one actually is a little bit better. Let's talk to Alessandra, pronouns she and her, calling in from Orange Rines. Hell yeah. Who labels herself as a spiritualist and says that magic is just science that we don't understand. Alessandra, you're on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing today?
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for calling.
And yeah, I really enjoyed watching you talk with the last caller, and I think that really helps for like my point of like you talked about how a lot of these like ritualistic practices in more like spiritualist groups is actually just mindfulness, and those rituals help you mentally. And I think that goes to my claim of these things that seemed magical at one point. The science explains it now. And so more things that seem magical, the science will explain and give us the new understanding. Because especially when I look at things like quantum physics and quantum entanglement, that's just magic to me. I don't understand it, but it's so cool that we can actually study it.
I give it to you, Aaron. That sounds like we're talking about quantum physics here.
Well, I admit, quantum mechanics is cool. It is wonderfully mind-bending stuff, but it's also completely explicable in terms of like we can put it into math and we can make predictions of absurd levels of precision, which to me is often rather different than more spiritualist claims where it is less concrete, less measurable, and sometimes even the claim is trying to measure it destroys the effect. I sometimes will see that with psychic claimants when they're going in for like, they're attempting to go for the $1 million prize that the James Randi Foundation used to have. And basically saying, well, when the skeptic comes in the room, the magic goes away. And it's just like, yeah, that's not how this works. It's also a bit interesting for me. Alessandra, you're a little bit far away from me, but I'm in Massachusetts, and down the road from me is probably the greatest spiritual center in New England, Salem, Massachusetts. So lots of spiritualist practice happening there. There are more witches now than there were back in the 18th century.
That makes me so happy to hear there'll be more witches.
Yeah,
Why?
especially come
And
October.
I think that is like a big flaw with a lot of magical and spiritual beliefs is the idea that there is no like structure or method to it. What got me into spirituality originally was like childhood interest in like alchemy and stuff, and seeing a magical science that everything could be explained, but it still be wonderful. And that's kind of led into my grounded beliefs and my curiosity into science is to be able to explain these seemingly unexplainable things and add a method to the madness.
Mm. Well, if you're trying to avoid madness, science won't help you because we keep discovering things that just make us go, "What?" Whether it's
Yeah.
quantum mechanics, whether it's the phylogenetic relations between things like, uh, Forrest, you could tell me tomorrow we just discovered a new phylum or a new kingdom, and I'd be like, "Okay, what? How did we miss that?" uh, so science is doing that to me all the time, and for the better. And heck, what was it? Just a few weeks ago, announcement that hey, new evidence from Mars, the best evidence yet for past life on the red planet. So man, yeah, every day science is coming along and saying, hey, world is awesome. Keep exploring. Uh,
Yeah.
when it comes to bringing spiritualist practice into it, my opinion of it is more whatever things have been like attached to more spiritual things have had to like leave behind the less mechanistic, the less reductionistic things uh, in order to succeed. So you mentioned alchemy, and
Hmm.
it's not so straightforward to go from alchemy to chemistry, but basically everything alchemists were doing or exploring is better explained by chemistry, where we understand now why you can't transmute lead into gold, not at least not without a particle accelerator. Um, and what my understanding is nowadays, alchemy has changed what it claims to be. For the longest time, it literally was we are trying to basically do transmutation of materials, make the elixir of life. Nowadays, especially under the influence of Carl Jung, is that it's now a completely spiritualist practice, and that was an escape when they realized, hey, everything that alchemists claim to try to do is hokum. So the only
Hmm.
defense now is, it's just a spiritualist practice. And I often see that as what spiritualist does. It becomes like a defense against why it doesn't succeed in explaining things, but yet still keep around for some reason. At least that's been my reductionistic and pessimistic take on spiritualism.
I get that, and I definitely can admit to falling flat into those tropes myself in my younger years. To me, I see spiritualism as like just a way of like having fun while trying to understand the world, and like it makes doing these mindfulness practices a little more fun.
Hmm. I guess if you can
I think that
separate between like the metaphysical claims and what you're
Mhm.
trying to think about in yourself. So like, let me just give you something that's a little bit weird that came across because again, I'm a hardcore materialist atheist, and among the things I'm trying to do is do cultural studies, and I've been slowly, very slowly, trying to learn Chinese. And in one of the songs I was listening to and looking at the text of it, it talks about this thing pronounced Muyu. And I look at the characters and I'm like, what the hell is this? Because I look at it, it's like, it's literally tree fish or wood fish.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what are you? Why is this song talking about hitting a woodfish? I don't know. I don't understand. And I look it up and realize, this is actually a somewhat musical instrument in Buddhist practice, where they're literally hitting this piece of wood shaped to look like a big fish with its eyes open. And I listened to a Buddhist practitioner explain what this is about. It's like, well, the fish is always has its eyes open, it's always awake, it doesn't sleep. And we are trying to do the same thing, that we are trying to, be awakened into the way things are. And so by hitting the woodfish, it's reminding you about being mindful, being awake. Literally, the Buddhists for thousands of years have been saying, hitting this thing and saying, stay woke.
That's what that is. There's a Buddhist temple in my town that I went to as a kid, and they were banging on this fucking fish. And this whole time, I was a child when I saw that. And for 30-something years, I thought I was crazy. I was like, there's no way. I'm misremembering that. Clearly, I'm inventing. There's a whole Buddhist fish thing. I'm learning stuff on this show, y'all. I'm blown away by this.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And like I say, you don't have to believe in any of the metaphysics of Buddhism. You don't have to believe in bodhisattvas or reincarnation and still have the idea of, reflect on what does the fish mean? What does the fish do? At least in theory, it's always awake. And we should always have that sort of mindfulness. And if this sort of practice can put you in that state, I don't see any harm. I don't see any possible issues. I would only say there's an issue if you think hitting the fish is going to give you, superpowers. And as far as I know, Buddhists don't claim that.
No, not yet.
Yeah, well, I didn't have much questions. I just wanted to give you guys a different, more lighthearted call. I know you guys get a lot of angry CS, and I wanted to just represent us witches and have nice, fun talk. So thank you, guys.
You can be mad if you want to. The biggest thing for me, Alessandra, is what you're talking about right now is stuff that I used to believe as well as a kid. I used to say this. I literally, what I have on the call screen here, the words, magic is just science we don't understand yet. I have said those words more times than I can count when I was a teenager and in my very early 20s, before I did full deconstruction, all this stuff, because that's how I was raised. And the biggest thing for me is that, how do you tell the difference between the magic that's just science we don't understand and the magic that isn't fucking real? You kind of can't. The way, actually you can. The way you tell the difference is science, is when science actually comes along and fills in those gaps. And so yes, insofar as we used to believe that, gods were throwing lightning bolts, and then we learned how ions worked, and now we know, what lightning is all about. And so, yes, that was science we don't understand. But I find that a lot of the time when that kind of phrase, magic is science we don't understand, when that kind of thing is thrown around, it's thrown around not as, hey, we don't understand this and it seems magical, but it's not. And it's instead used to justify believing in woo-woo nonsense, in mystical beliefs, in ghosts and spirits and angels and demons and everything we were talking about in the last call, Reiki and therapeutic touch and all this stuff that is, for lack of a better word, either magic or not real at all. And then this kind of phrasing is just used to kind of gloss over that and say, well, it is science, you just don't know it yet. And I think even if you were correct about that, that still wouldn't be a reason to believe it. Germ theory is true, but before we had actual evidence of germs, there wasn't a good reason to believe in germs until we had the evidence, even though they were real, right? So it's kind of the same thing here. If there's a reason to believe in ghosts and in extra dimensional beings and in the different realms of existence and Bifrost bridges between whatever's if there's a reason to believe in those things, then we should find those reasons, and then afterwards, then we should start believing in those things.
I really want to say what you said of how do we tell the difference between the science we don't understand magic and the woofy foo-foo magic. That actually just cracked it for me. Being whoa, I can't say I'm one of the good ones magic. It's all just either real or not real.
Yeah. That is what cracked it for me as well. Is like I said, I grew up pagan. I was taught to believe the same way you do. And when it came to medicine and going to the doctor and getting whatever treatment, it was science. And then when I came home and my mom wanted to channel her energy into me to heal me, then it was, well, this is science we don't understand, And I thought about it the same way, where it was if I apply the exact same rules of evidence that I would expect in any other part of my life ever, this doesn't work, And if it worked, I would have evidence, but I don't have evidence because it doesn't fucking work. And so that's that was exactly what cracked it for me as well when I was probably 21 years old.
Yeah. And if I may throw in one more anecdote for myself, down the road from me is the site of a spiritualist medical miracle. If you're familiar with Christian Science,
Yeah.
the house of Mary Baker Eddy is literally down the road from me. And literally, this is supposed to be where she recovered from this terrible fall that made it so she could never walk again after 3 days. And of course, why is it 3 days? That sounds a little familiar. Someone else who got up after 3 days. Where have I heard this before? But in Christian Science, all sickness is basically in your head. It's all imagination. It's a form of idealism, and lots of people have been hurt, including children, because of this sort of belief. Because instead of going to the doctor, praying hard enough, believing hard enough, as a child suffers from diabetes without insulin, or has a tumor that's not being operated on that could have been completely savable. These horror stories, unfortunately, exist, and because of the sorts of spiritualist beliefs that dare not pass scientific rigor and yet call itself science. And like I say, it's literally down the road from me here, so it's particularly on my mind.
Now, I understand that. I work in a teenage inpatient facility, and I have gotten patients that were LGBTQ because their parents thought because they're LGBTQ something's wrong with them, and it's just heartbreaking seeing people use those spiritual religious beliefs in ways that actively harm others.
Absolutely. Harming others and harming oneself.
Yeah. Sounds like we're on the same page here. Anyway, with that, Alessandra, is there anything else you have for us before we proceed to move on?
No, thank you guys so much for taking the time to talk with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you calling in.
Thank you.
Have an awesome rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Is it just like, am I freaking out, or are we fucking like 2-0 right now? Like we get two deconverts. We taught one person that therapeutic touch isn't real and chi isn't a thing, but you can still do cool yoga shit if you want to. And we talked to another person about how science is science when it does science. It's the best show that we've ever done. It's amazing.
What can I say? We are truly following what Bill Nye, the science guy, says what we should be trying to do is change the world.
Change the world. Absolutely. Let's talk to yet another person. And hey, theists, if you're out there, clearly this is the show to deconvert on, because we're doing so well. I'm trying everything I can to jinx this. 720-619-2288 or use the web link in the description if you're outside the US, and let's talk. In the meantime, let's talk to Corey. Pronouns he, him. Calling in from...
I love tiny nipples.
Who wants to talk about the 500 witnesses to the resurrection. Corey, you were on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you guys?
Never had a bad day, dude.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you for taking my call. So I have been a longtime Christian and in my own process of deconstruction. And I've recently met a friend, and she pointed me to your guys' show. And I've just been taking watching the last few and taking it in. And I would say, I agree with probably most of the points that you make. And I am a statistician by trade. So I'm used to data, used to science, searching truth, used to uncertainty and not being able to explain everything, right? So it's proving what you can, and always in that search, And so I think for me, it's I think when I look at scripture, yes, religion has been used in terrible ways. Yes, Christianity is often misinterpreted. People are people. They're always gonna, get things wrong and take advantage of the situation. And so I think for me, a lot of the things I can kind of explain away that people kind of, corrupted. But honestly, I don't really know. But one thing, I feel like my the friend who was pointing me here, she's an atheist. Like, she's like pulling me into the deep end. Like, you got to come join me. And I'm like, oh, like I agree with so much, but I can also see that other side and that other kind of um, like faith-based. Like, I can't quite prove it, but I still believe it. But one thing I can't kind of like get away from is the 500 witnesses after the resurrection. And it's like, I feel like a lot of stuff that Jesus said, like, to me, kind of holds up with kind of some of the ways that I can speak to it. But like, the resurrection is like such a big difference to me. And so I was just curious. I'm sure you guys have probably talked about this before. And I'm sorry, I did not search and dig into all that. But I really respect you guys, and just, very curious kind of your take on that.
Can I start with a question really quick, Aaron? Are you cool with that? Sick. So Corey, like, 500 witnesses. I haven't talked specifically about this in recent memory, but I do know where it comes from. Can I ask you, where do you get the claim that 500 people saw Jesus raised from the dead?
So I mean, I think there's like evidence in scriptures themselves. And I feel like I've always heard that there are evidence outside of scripture. That is one thing I have not personally dug into to find evidence of that. But I feel like that's one thing. And I want to say it was like Lee Strobel who had like the first time I had seen that, where it kind of made the claim that there were witnesses outside of just the Bible itself.
So I'm pretty sure, and I'm sure there's somebody out there, Justin from Deconstruction Zone is going to watch this later and put his fist through his computer screen because I'm missing something, but I'm pretty damn sure the only time in the Bible that mentions 500 witnesses is 1 Corinthians 15, verse 6. So you've got in 1 Corinthians 15, as Paul is writing these letters and describing like the resurrection. And he says in verse 3, I've delivered to you the first that I had also received, how Christ died for our sins according to the scriptures, and that he was buried, and he rose again on the third day according to those scriptures, and that he was seen by Cephas, then of the 12. Then there's verse 6. After that, he was seen of above, which I'm guessing means like hanging above. I don't know. 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep. They're dead now. After that, he was seen of James, and then of the apostles, and last of all, he was seen by me also, as he was born out of due time, whatever the fuck that means. So this is, as far as I know, the only reference to that specific number is in 1 Corinthians, chapter 15. Paul says that 500 people saw Jesus at one point or another, and that's the only reference to this. When we talk about who else saw him, when we talk about other references to the resurrection with other numbers, we can look back to Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And in Matthew, we have exactly 2 witnesses. In Mark, we have exactly 3 witnesses. In Luke, we have 3 named witnesses and then several other women.
I need to push back.
Yeah.
In Mark, there are 0 witnesses.
What? Mark is married.
In Mark, they don't see the resurrected Jesus. They come to an empty tomb, but they don't see the resurrected Jesus.
That is true. Good point. That's a very good point. Yes. And then in Luke, we've got 3 women and then a bunch of other women. And then in John, we're back to just 1 witness again. And so, like, you've got 4 tellings, or really 5, but 4 tellings that are thorough of this resurrection event. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John vary in almost every single possible way. Was there an earthquake when the tomb was opened? Was the tomb already open when they got there or not? Were there angels present? How many angels were present? Were there men present? How many men were present? Was Jesus already risen when they got there, or did he do it after they arrived? Did Jesus appear before them? Did they see the guy or not? How many witnesses were there at that moment? Did those witnesses tell anybody about what they saw? How many people did they tell if they did tell people? All of these different things vary between those 4 gospels. And outside of those 4 gospels, you have Paul, yet another person who wasn't there and wasn't an eyewitness and none of this stuff, who then says that it was actually 500 people. And he's saying this in Corinthians, which is pretty flamboyant messaging as far as the Bible is concerned. I'm pretty sure that's the same part where he talks about slavery and shit. So as a statistician, Corey, would that be good enough for you? If we were talking about whether or not somebody had lobster for dinner, and we had this kind of conflicting, eyewitness testimonies and anecdotal reports, versus if we're talking about the dude who created the universe, and there's heaven and hell and sins and deities and angels and all these other really big claims, isn't that kind of hard to wrap your head around as a statistician? Does that bother you?
I mean, so yes, totally agree with the skepticism, right? Of that, the retelling, the different storylines. And I feel like you can say that to so many different pieces across the different letters, right? Inconsistencies of what people remember and how they kind of tell their own perspective. So totally agree with kind of, I don't know, the skepticism of it. But it is hard to have multiple sources of that. And especially not hearing much of sources that refuted that. Or people that believed it so strongly to do the things that they did. So it's hard. It's a struggle. And I think out of all of that, well, maybe I'll pause there. Yeah, sorry if you want to respond to those.
So there's a few different ways we could do this, but because you have the stats background, let's play a numbers game, because there's some interesting things if we do a bit of compare and contrast of some of the other numbers we have from the New Testament. So, Corey, the 500 witnesses, or the over 500 witnesses that saw Jesus, do you think this sighting was before or after the ascension of Jesus?
I guess it would be before.
Okay. So that, I think, creates an interesting problem. If we go to Acts, the first chapter of Acts, you have Jesus after the resurrection hanging out with his bros for 40 days and then ascending to heaven. And then you have the events of Pentecost. And the thing is, after the ascension and after Peter is gathering up the group to have their big huddle just before Pentecost, according to Acts chapter 1, verse 15, and I'm going to read from the NIV version, they're all going to be pretty similar. In those days, Peter stood up among the believers, a group numbering about 120. So that's a bit of an interesting thing, because if over 500 people all at once saw the resurrected Jesus, but within 40 days, there's only 120 believers, how did they get a 75-ish% recidivism rate that fast after literally seeing the Son of God come back from the dead? What happened to the 75%?
I mean, that's a good point, but I don't know if you could necessarily say that that's concrete. I feel like you had...
I'm taking the numbers from the Bible, so either the numbers are wrong. I mean, the only way these numbers aren't concrete is if they're not real. So either the 500 isn't real, the 120 isn't real, or the vision is of the 500 having the vision of Jesus is sometime after the ascension. That seems to be the only three options.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's so many examples of being, surfacing in different areas. I don't think it was a one-time meet the church kind of thing. I think it was different sightings, based on the different interpretations and the different letters. But I don't know.
No. According to 1 Corinthians 15:6, it says the 500 brothers saw him at once, at the same time. So this was supposed to be a mass sighting by 500 people at once. And then all of a sudden, we're finding at Pentecost, about 75% of them had dropped away.
Interesting.
And this is before any outside groups are persecuting or anything like this. This is literally between Jesus resurrecting and the church going public. The vast majority of the people who allegedly witnessed this thing dropped out. That, to me, sounds like whatever they saw, they decided it wasn't the real deal. And we don't hear from them anymore because it doesn't make good propaganda.
Maybe. But I mean, I think you could also say that, those are two different time periods, right? So they didn't always stayed
No, this is
together.
within like a
So
month-ish of time. If we're taking these numbers seriously, we are talking in about 40 days, not like 40 years, 40 days, the vast majority of witnesses to the resurrected Jesus said, I'm out.
maybe. I mean, I guess. I mean, I'm not saying no. Like, how do I know? But I think there are like other situations that you could explain that, because I think like we think of like the
let's
church
come
as
up with
it is
one. What's a
today and go
situation that
down
would
to the
make sense
church.
of this? I mean, again, we're talking about saying the number of believers went from 500 to 120 in a matter of weeks. What's a plausible explanation for that that doesn't make us doubt what they saw?
Well, I mean, I think sometimes like we think of church as like once a week you go down to the church building, right? Like you're a believer,
These
you're
people saw the
a
Son of God
member.
come back to life, and within 40 days said, I'm out. This isn't the cafeteria Catholic deciding that coming to Sunday once a month isn't worth it anymore. These are people who were supposed to be seeing the most amazing miracle of all time and can't even hang around long enough for the announcement.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe, but I don't know if that would be compelling enough to throw it all out.
Well, there's one other thing worth noting here when it comes to cults that have falsified predictions is that whether it's I don't want to say Heaven's Gate because that became a suicide, but there was, for example, back in the 50s, there was this UFO cult that was studied rather thoroughly by psychologists because a bunch of psychology grad students pretty much entered the cult to examine things from the inside. They became pretty much informants. And they had this doomsday prediction that an alien spacecraft was going to come and do this world destruction. I think this was in 1953. Don't hold me off on the exact year, but the time comes, the abductions and destruction don't happen. And what does the group do? Did everyone leave? No, some people left, but those who remained were even more hardcore and came up with some excuse for why things didn't happen. So when I look at numbers like this, and this is assuming these numbers, and that might even be unsafe, but just assuming these numbers, to me it looks like, okay, some sort of sighting happened, and the only people who were convinced by it were the hardcore believers left in the group, and everyone else left, and because they've left, we just don't hear from them anymore. That's more consistent with what we normally see with cults, that you just have the leftovers of the hardcore people who have come up with whatever excuse, no matter how much they've been disproven. These seem like the people that are the least rational to talk to and find out what actually happened.
By the way, what Aaron was just describing there, that cult is called the Seekers. They were led by a lady named Dorothy Martin, and that whole event was studied by a psychologist named Leon Festinger, who wrote a book called When Prophecy Fails about that entire event, and then went on to literally coin the term cognitive dissonance based on that study. Like that's where we get cognitive dissonance theory, where you see something that's different than what your mind thinks, so you just rationalize whatever the hell you need to make reality fit the crazy shit you believe. That right there is literally where we get those concepts from.
So I would 100% agree with that, and I do think that that's a good push in that space of like, were they truly believing that? And I do think that there are examples of people who have done that to their own detriment, right? But I think there are also examples of cults where someone is trying to get selfish gain out of that. And so I think that's one of the questions that I would have coming out of that. Like, who is to gain from that? Because it seemed like all the leaders became martyrs, basically. And so
that
doesn't have
is
to have
also another. That's a different claim, and we can't actually show that that is the case. Like when it comes to like the stories of like the martyrdom of Peter or other figures like that, they come from 2nd, 3rd, 4th century or even later sources, and they're extremely fantastical. There are stories of Peter being executed in Rome, but after he had a wizard battle with Simon Magus, who was trying to fly up in the air, and Peter brings him down with prayers and things like that. That Peter also was like resurrecting fish while in Rome as well. So these are the kinds of stories that contain our witnessing to Peter being martyred. And we don't usually consider these reliable sources coming way later and with even more fantastical tales that we don't normally believe. And of course, if Peter was killed, we don't necessarily know for what reason, if it was because he was a Christian or is because he got caught up in some other legal snafus. It's not exactly like the Romans had CSI level quality and innocent before guilty practices or anything like that. So we really don't exactly have great records for why these folks died or how they died, and the stories that we have of them are late, fantastical, and a pretty poor way to show the truth of what they believe, because we have to now believe even more crazy stories to believe that they even believed the other crazy story. It's kind of a house of cards.
It's also important to remember that, like, just because they were martyred doesn't necessarily mean that their story was true, and it doesn't have to be somebody at the top who is benefiting from this. The whole point of this is that, like, this is somebody trying to rationalize their own mind against the world that is telling them their own mind is wrong. And so the person at the top who's benefiting is the individual who is reducing the discomfort of having to deal with the world that's going contradictory to what their brain is telling them is real. So it doesn't have to be like a big conspiracy thing. I actually have that book we mentioned, When Prophecy Fails, right here. And this is after these people have sold their cars and their homes and given away their life savings. They have abandoned their families. They have given up everything because they believe the world is going to end and a UFO is going to take them away to outer space to go meet Jesus. And, like, these people are bought into this. And when it doesn't happen, this is what the cult leader says. She comes out and she says, "Mighty is the word of God, and by his word have ye been saved. For from the mouth of death have ye been delivered, and at no point has there been such a force loosed upon the earth. Not since the beginning of time upon this earth has there been such a force of good and light as now floods this room, and that which has been loosed within this room now floods the entire earth." And after that speech, these people who have abandoned everything are out in the street grabbing people and telling them about the miracle that just happened. They're calling the news and telling the newspapers and the news channels, "You have to come talk to us. A miracle just happened." They are shouting from the rooftops that a miracle just happened, and they believe it more than ever. These people are the biggest fucking losers in this scenario. They've lost everything. And so that you're asking who's in charge, who's at the top. It isn't fucking the lady in charge of the cult. It's every single one of these people who, the more they go and preach it now, the more they can prove to themselves that they were right and that they didn't actually lose anything. They're recovering. They're saving their livelihood from the possibility that they've been bamboozled.
Yeah. So I mean, I think those are great points, and yeah, I totally agree. But I guess it brings me to kind of my last question of, I guess, like, if you imagine a faith where science and religion can coexist, right? And there's, yes, religion's been used for all sorts of evil purposes. But I guess what's the downside of believing that there's something out there? Even to all the earlier points and all the earlier guests, where there's a lot of unknown stuff that we just haven't gotten there from a science standpoint, and I think we probably will. But I guess what's the downside of rejecting? Maybe this is the statistician, right? Rejecting the null hypothesis that there is a faith.
I would actually say, as the statistician, don't think of it as not yet shown. Think of it as this. Suppose there is a correct belief about God, that there is a God and there's something true about that. But we also know there are bazillions of God beliefs that are incompatible. So instead, think of it as rolling a 10,000 sided die. What's the chances that you're going to roll a 7? And when you realize that's the epistemology that you're kind of depending on, what if it's true? Your what ifs are a gargantuan library of possibilities, and 10,000 is a severe undercount. And conversely, we just have no evidence in favor of any of them. So to me, if science and religion are going to be compatible, religion has to have claims that can actually be demonstrably true about the existence and nature of the said thing. Otherwise, we just have a bad epistemology, and we are endangering of believing false and harmful things. I mean, that's the main reason I'm motivated to have these conversations. Let's try to have better beliefs and a better epistemology, and not just say, I'm going to stick with this because I want it to be true. Because, again, it's all a part of, are you fooling yourself, or are you being brave enough to question even the things that you want to be true, but are at least trying to test and see, am I wrong?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is like it's not the slippery slope fallacy when you can demonstrate that there is a slippery slope. And if you can allow yourself to compartmentalize your mind in these ways, and it can be argued that everybody does this to some degree. We all have biases and we all struggle with dissonance and we all do these things. But the point of skepticism is to try to not do that as much as possible and to try to examine your beliefs as much as possible. But if you are deliberately setting out a category in your mind, this little compartment where you can say, all my life, I'm not going to believe something unless P is less than 0.05, right? But in this situation, best case scenario, P is 5. Best case scenario, it's a coin toss. And more often than not, it's significantly less than that. But you know what? I'm gonna more than that. Yeah, sorry, I forgot I'm speaking backwards, but like, I'm saying the chances are less than that. But like more often than not, I've got nothing better than a coin toss or something much worse, much less reliable. But fuck it, what's the harm? That is the harm. The action itself is the harm because you are allowing yourself the opportunity, the permission to believe that way about one thing, which allows you to do it for anything else that you want. And those guardrails come off real fast. And if somebody can make you believe absurdities, they can make you commit atrocities. You can end up doing and believing and saying and thinking and being horrible things because you allow for this one thing there. And like I said, it's not a slippery slope fallacy when we have shown time and time again that slippery slope is real and people fall down it all the fucking time. So yeah, I think it's a massive danger. And there is no benefit that you can get from it, Corey, that you would not get from other things without that same danger involved.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, I think it's good perspective, and I do think it's one of those like everyone should be thinking for themselves, right? Use your critical thinking, and I think for me, it's like there's all those possibilities. Totally agree with that. But I think that's kind of my like, try and explain as much as we can, remove all the things that we can use to contradict. And so for me, it's like there's still a path there. But I totally agree. There's so many interpretations there that can take you down some great places. So yeah, I agree. Thank you for the time today. I really appreciate both your perspectives.
I appreciate you, Corey. Have an awesome rest of your day. Thanks so much for calling us.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. 3 in a row, yo. What are we going? Come on. It's been banger after certified banger. Theists, where are you? Like, this is the show, apparently. Like, this is the one that's working for you. We've got a few lines open. We have 2 atheists currently waiting on the line. Looks like we have a theist who's currently in the screening room. We had the one guy calling in saying that there's only 2 sexes and only one race, and that person hung up because he didn't understand how call screening worked, and he was just trying to debate our call screener, who kept telling him that he has to wait to talk to us, and he didn't want to do that. Like, we have lines open. We have lines open for people who want to talk to us about science, about spirituality, about faith, whatever. If you're a theist, if you believe in a god or gods, if you are a science denier of some kind, if you don't believe in evolution or the Big Bang, if you want to talk about the age of the Earth, if you want to talk about black holes and the speed of light and the recession rate of galaxies, if you want to talk about speciation and sex and gender, this is the show for you. Pick up that phone, 720-619-2288, or if you're outside the U.S., use the web link in the description to call us. I would love to talk to you. I know Aaron would love to talk to you. We're very nice. We're very nice. Aaron is incredibly educated. I'm incredibly stupid, and we will have a great conversation with you. Pick up that phone. Do you have the call screen up? Do you want to pick one, or you want me to just keep picking them?
Keep going, because I keep failing to have things loaded. I got too many tabs. I don't know if I should admit this, but currently the window I'm looking at, I think I have about 40 tabs open, and I have 5 other windows open. So
I use a new window for that reason. I currently have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13. I currently have 15 windows open, and each one of them has like 30 tabs here, 40, because they're different projects. This is the window for when I'm writing this essay. This is the window for when I'm writing this script, and like I make a new window for whenever I'm doing these shows. Oh man. I'm gonna go ahead. So we just got a theist on the line, but we have an atheist who's been waiting for over an hour. So if it's okay with you, I'm gonna go ahead and burn through that one really quick. So that person doesn't wait too long. Is that cool?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's very fair.
This should be a very quick one anyway. Let's talk to Frankie, pronouns he, him, calling in from Scratchy Cats, who wants to know about life outside of the Earth. It looks like Frankie, you were on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How you doing today?
Hey, hello. I'm doing great.
Right on. What can I do for you?
Really quickly, Forrest, I want to thank you because your channel has helped me in my deconversion. I was Christian schooled, so I'm way behind on especially science.
That's okay. I'm happy to be a part of it.
Everything, yeah. So that was really
congratulations. Congratulations on your deconstruction. I'm honored to be a part of your education. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm. And I watch a lot of atheist channels, so I don't know. I'm pretty sure you have said this in your refutation. A lot of times, apologists will bring up that like evolution and abiogenesis break the second law of thermodynamics, and I'm pretty sure you believe that it doesn't, right? And you've said that.
Yeah. So the really important thing about the second law of thermodynamics, talking about how entropy increases, the thing that people like to forget about that is that, number one, we're talking about like individual closed systems with that. So when we're talking about life, like we have new energy coming in all the time from the sun. That's feeding photosynthesis. That's causing producers to then feed first level consumers, second level consumers, on and on and on. The second thing is that just saying entropy always increases is the very reductive baby way of saying that, because its entropy increases, the total entropy of the universe always increases. Entropy can decrease within an individual system as long as the total entropy of the universe increases along with it. So like, take for example, you can do this demonstration if you have like a shitload of dice, put them in a jar and just dump them in there all together, and they're all wangly and on top of each other at all different angles. Jostle the jar around, and they will all settle down flat and be in these like really neat, perfect, orderly looking rows. And what you've done there is you reduced the rotational entropy of these things. They are all now very orderly in terms of rotation, but the translational entropy of them, how they're moving through space, is now a lot higher, because although they're very well stacked, there's a shitload more space in the jar now that's empty, open space that shit can bounce around in. And so similarly, when we're talking about like assembling a protein, some biomolecule or whatever like that, yes, entropy is reducing in this way. But while that's going on, none of these reactions going on in biochemistry are going to be like anthropically unfavorable, right? None of them are going to get away from releasing heat out into the universe. None of them are going to get away from like being able to somehow have a higher free energy than they started with. Like, none of them are going to be able to do any of that shit. They are always obeying the laws of physics, even when they are creating order out of disorder, because the total disorder of the entire universe around them continues to increase. That's why it's really misleading to say, the second law of thermodynamics. It just shows that somebody hasn't really thought about it that hard.
Yeah.
And if I may give another example that's helpful, ice. The fact that water, especially wintertime is coming. If I put a bucket of water out, it is thermodynamically favored that a bucket of water out in winter is going to cool down and freeze. And ice is very structured. So structure coming because of the second law of thermodynamics, that heat is going from a warm object to a cool object, and then you get a phase transition. So if the creationists were right, ice should not exist. I think that's
a really great example.
So I think that's a cool demonstration that that's not right.
Nice.
Mm-hmm. Another related thing is you also bring up how rudimentary the building blocks of life can self-assemble, and we found that I believe in space or on meteors or something. I believe we found rudimentary. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the word right now.
Yeah. So the four major macromolecules that make all life are proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and nucleic acids. The things that make those things, namely amino acids, fatty acids, sugars, and nitrogenous bases. Yeah, we find that shit in space all the time. Nitrogenous bases we have found on meteors that have crashed into Earth, little meteorites. We found all five of them: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. Inside those meteors, we find simple sugars and fatty acids and amino acids on asteroids and comets and shit all the time. As far as amino acids in particular are concerned, we need 20 of those, 20 different types of amino acids to make life on this planet. We have found over 500 different types all throughout nature. So they're made all the time out in nature in ways that we have made them in laboratory settings as well through abiotic processes. And then creationists will argue, well, they tinkered with it. They messed with the knobs. They contaminated the jar, whatever. Didn't contaminate the fucking asteroid, did they? And that's where we're finding shit. So it's pretty cool.
Actually, even further than that, in molecular clouds, I think we've also detected amino acids and alcohol molecules. So unless Thor is out there having a bender across the galaxy, nature somewhat naturally produces these molecules.
So I remember watching this thing a little while. It was like the drunkest place in the universe, and it was like this one nebula or whatever the hell out there that was 98% pure ethyl alcohol. It's crazy.
Aged to perfection.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and so my main question that I just kind of thought of and I've been thinking of a few days is, why have we not found any evidence of life other outside of Earth?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So the key here is there's three things you need to keep in mind. Number one, we have found things that seem to indicate the possibility that maybe life was there at one point, but none of it is enough to go off of. There was that thing that came out a month or two ago about they found these things on Mars that looked a lot like algae, and there was a lot of asshole influencers that were like, we just proved life on Mars. No, we fucking didn't. We found something that looks like something that looks like something that life sometimes does. And and until we actually get those rocks back here to Earth or go there to check them ourselves, we're not going to know. But the second thing to remember is how far we've been looking. You can look up maps of what we've actually seen. Let me see if I can find one. Map of what we've seen of the universe. Is that a good way to say that? Maybe. And you can see these really cool maps of it looks weird. It's like a flat plane with a shit ton of rays going in one direction and slightly less rays going in the exact opposite direction. And I can't find one right now because I don't even know what I'm looking for. But basically it's all the different ways that we can point a telescope from Earth is what we're seeing. And we can't point towards the center of our galaxy because it's too bright. And we can only really look in these two directions. And what you're talking about there, I think Neil deGrasse Tyson said it best, was it's like going to the ocean with a cup and scooping up some water and saying there's no whales in this, so there are no whales in the ocean, right? That's basically what we're talking about.
Yeah.
What we need to remember is that not only do all the building blocks of life self-assemble, both in laboratory settings and out in space all the fucking time, and they do all the things that they do in living things by themselves, by obeying the natural laws of chemistry and physics all the time. Life also got started on this planet damn near as quickly as it possibly could. We have evidence of life on Earth going back at the absolute earliest, like the closest to us we can agree on is like 3.8 billion years. That is within like a couple 100,000 years after what we called the Hadean, which was when the Earth was getting bombarded with heavy asteroids as it was clearing out its orbit around the sun. The Earth was a molten hellscape, and almost immediately when the Earth cooled down enough for a living thing to exist, it did. So that alone tells me a lot.
Wow.
It's crazy. And so like that's pretty fucking cool to me. And then the third and most important thing to remember is really in line with like the Drake equation, if you're familiar with it. Like it's asking the question, like, if there were aliens out there, if there was life for us to find, right? Most of the things that could have life are really fucking far away from us. The closest Earth-like planet to us is about 4 light years away from us. So unless we're talking about like tiny microbial life on like Europa or some other place here on this solar system, right? If we're talking about advanced enough life that could potentially communicate, or we could see it and recognize it as life from a distance, we're talking about something that's very, 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 very far away. And now we have this question. It's not just does it exist? It's that it has to exist at the right time, that it is evolved to the point of intelligence and complexity like us, and then also has developed the kind of technology that it's able to send and receive this kind of communication across the galaxy. And also it did that. And also it is currently actively looking for us in the right direction, in the right time, so that way that radio wave takes 4 years to get to us at the right time when we're listening for it in the right direction. And that's just, there's so many variables there. It's not just like you call somebody on their cell phone. It's, do they have a phone? Is there a cell tower? Is their phone turned on? Are they paying attention to it? Even that is crazy enough. Now factor in, have they evolved to the point where they know how to develop a cell phone, you know? Those are a lot of variables to factor in. And so it suddenly makes a lot more sense that statistically speaking, yes, there's got to be life out there. But holy shit, the chance of us talking to them or them talking to us is so much smaller than the chance of them existing in the first place.
Yeah. One thing that just came into my mind while you were talking is not even like intelligent life, but life like trees, something we could hypothetically see from like a camera or like a space probe from pretty far away, you know. I don't believe we found anything like that, but that'd be very interesting to find.
A big thing we would be looking for there is just oxygen.
Life.
So a big thing we're looking there is just oxygen, because we can use spectroscopy. Spectrometry is the scientific study of like how light interacts with shit. Whenever light hits a thing and is absorbed and emitted and whatever, like what specific light spectra come out of different chemicals. And spectroscopy is the practice then of looking out in space and measuring specific spectra of light to see what kind of things are around. I've actually got over here, yep. I've got a spectroscope that you use in like a introductory chemistry lab. It's this weird little triangular bitch, and you look through this thing, and if you have like a light, a little neon light or a helium lamp or argon, whatever, you can pass electricity through a specific gas, and it'll let out light, and you can look through this thing, and it, like a prism, splits up the bands, and you can see specific lines of specific colors in a specific pattern, and use that like a fingerprint to identify specifically what elements or what compounds you're looking at, like whatever light is passing through. You get what's called an absorption or an emission line spectrum, depending on how you're doing that. And so by doing this, we can look out in the universe and we can say, like we were talking about a minute ago, here's this huge fucking cloud of gas. And by looking at the specific spectra of light that are coming out of that, we can tell you that that is alcohol over there, specifically ethyl alcohol, the kind you can drink. as opposed to like methanol, which will just make you go blind and die stupidly.
Oh.
And so, yeah, it's a bad time. And so, like, that's what we're looking. If we look out in the universe now, we look at these other Earth-like planets. One of the major things we're looking for is oxygen, because oxygen is stupid electronegative. It's really, really good at binding to things. And so free oxygen, there are very few, very specific, very rare events that would cause free oxygen to exist without life, specifically through photosynthesis, making it exist. It's such a catastrophic thing that when we look at this planet, as life, as the early life on this planet, we have these photosynthetic microorganisms floating around in the ocean. At this time, our atmosphere is largely carbon dioxide and a lot of methane. And so this early photosynthetic microorganisms floating in the ocean are gobbling up all this carbon dioxide, pooping out oxygen. For a while, that's not a big deal. And then we get this tipping point where it's so abundant in the atmosphere. Number one, the sky turns blue. That's where that comes from. It used to be orange. Second of all, the earth rusts. We have these huge, thick bands of iron oxides, of hematites, of all these different, like, oxide chemicals in the geological strata at this time. The earth fucking rusts. And then the earth is plunged into a series of ice ages that we don't recover from until animals evolve and start gobbling up that oxygen. And so, like, if we find a planet out there with a shitload of free oxygen in the atmosphere, that's damn near guarantee there's something living there. That's a big sign of it. Liquid water, that can happen by itself. Other, like, we see, like, what was the one that we saw on Venus a little while ago, was some nitrogenous compound. I don't remember what exactly it was. Yeah, phosphine. Yes, thank you. We found phosphine in the atmosphere. It was like, maybe is a thing. But no, there are some ways for phosphine to happen. And indeed, it seems that's what was going on. Same thing with the shit we're finding on Mars right now. There's some ways for shit like that to happen. We don't know for sure until we know for sure. But, like, the big thing, if we find out oxygen, that's going to be big news.
Mm-hmm.
And if I may, I have to hawk my wares because when it comes to the existence of aliens and especially when it comes to religion, I had written a book about that very thing. So I have to be hawking this every chance I get. And among the things I do is I take the Drake equation, our current knowledge of the parameters in there, and throw out our best range of possibilities for those values to say, are we alone in the galaxy? And I got a whole appendix for that. So it's as far as I know, this is the only theology book that has differential equations and Monte Carlo simulations to do its work. And my best guesstimate right now is our chances of being alone or having current neighbors in the Milky Way galaxy is basically 50-50. And if they are out there, they're so stupidly far away, it should not be surprising we haven't heard from them. Because of not only the grand distances that it would take a long time to get the signal, but also just like how a light bulb looks dimmer and dimmer the further away it gets, when you have things on the other side of the galaxy, which is about 100,000 light years across, we don't have like the technology to actually make a radio shout loud enough to be detectable over that distance with all the other background stuff. It's hard to talk, and even if you did, it's at a pretty slow rate. Frankie, you sound a bit young, but are you familiar with a 56K modem?
No, I am not.
Okay, so back in the good old days, in the old days when my back wasn't hurting as much, if you wanted to go on the internet, you had to use a phone line, and it would then make all these terrible noises and things like that. And at my house, my parents were at, the rate that you could download things wasn't at gigabytes per second, megabytes per second. I was usually like a 2 or 3 kilobytes per second, which means I'd have to wait like a minute to look at one picture. And that is the rate that we are able to get data from our probes around when they've gone past Pluto. And Pluto is close by compared to the nearest star system, which is close compared to the other side of the galaxy, which is close compared to other galaxies. So you can imagine, even if the aliens wanted to talk to us, they would be talking to us at such a slow data transmission. We might be waiting months for them just to say, "How y'all doing?"
They're still waiting for their America Online demo disc to come in the mail. That's what the problem is.
Yes. And one other science fiction thing in my head as well. I shouldn't say science fiction, but it is a proposal, but it's still beyond our technology.
Mhm.
Everything with mass affects light because of our friend general relativity. The sun bends light, and it bends it in such a way that it could also bend it like a lens. So theoretically, we could actually use the sun as a giant lens for a telescope. And we'd have to put the receiver for where it would focus things at, like I think something like at like the orbit of Pluto, something absurd like that. But you would have a telescope with a lens the size of the sun, and this would give you resolution well enough to actually look at cities on planets tens or hundreds of light years away. So we wouldn't be reading newspapers on those alien worlds, but we might be able to tell, hey, that world 10 light years away has a cityscape with this sun telescope. I would say fund NASA, but right now, from what I can tell, the government still isn't open yet. So call your senator.
Yeah. Or you, Frankie, you could grow up to be the scientist that does this thing. And you could be so much, if you build that thing, who's that guy? I know his last name is Lowell. I'm looking him up right now because he's a namesake of the Abbott Lowell. The guy who he founded the Lowell Observatory, and he was staring at Mars through a telescope and believed that he could see the channels on Mars that was proving there was a civilization, and what he was actually seeing was his own cataracts. Yeah, dude, you could be the scientist, Frankie. You could build the sun-sized telescope to go see who's doing what on some distant planet. That'd be tight.
Yeah.
I hope this answers your questions. I hope we've covered a bunch of stuff here. So I hope it answers your questions and fills in some gaps for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Right on. Awesome. We're going to move on to our next call then, but I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for calling in. Thanks for being here. Make sure to pick up Aaron's book, available at fine bookstores everywhere.
Yes. Yes. If you have questions, buy at least 2 copies. You can read it faster if you have 2 copies.
Yes. Yes. One for each eye.
Course.
Yeah. See you later, Frankie.
Bye.
Bye-bye. What an awesome call. It sounds like we're only going to have good calls tonight. It sounds like things are going to go real well. I mean, flip, dude.
I like that idea. Yeah.
Let's see if we can't break that, because we've got we have one more theist on the line, and then we've got one more atheist on the line, and then that's probably going to be the show unless somebody else calls in to tell us why God's real. Let's talk to Gary, pronouns he, him, calling in from fatty liver disease. There's a D in there. I don't know. It's just, I'm adding it. Who's a theist who wants to talk about magic, meaning, cognitive dissonance, and science. That's a lot of topics. Gary, you're on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How you doing today?
Hello. Greetings. Yeah, I've talked to you.
Greetings.
Guys, a couple of times, well, 1 or 2 times. Thanks. Glad to be here. Yeah, I was trying to think about an easy way to broach this subject, to unite this, magic, meaning, cognitive dissonance, and science. Okay. So you guys would say that if someone makes an assertion about God, so God exists, we'll keep it simple. So someone calls and says God exists. You would say that they have a belief in God. Is that correct?
I mean, probably. It depends. Like, if they wanted to get real pedantic and ask what we meant by belief, then we go into that whole thing. But like, just colloquially speaking, yeah, probably.
Yes, yeah, sure. No biggie. I'm not here to trick anybody. I'm not into that. Yeah, so if someone makes, whether they believe in Jehovah, Krishna, even the Buddha. So, all right. So you've got a a belief. Now, if someone said that a value judgment is a belief, what would you say to that? And I can unpack that a little bit, but if someone, colloquial speaking, you know, a value judgment, even shaking somebody's hand is asserting a value judgment. You're saying, thank you, glad to meet you. These are all value judgments. So
can I just ask, is just to see, is the argument at the end of this going to be that like any value judgment we put on anything, morality, ethics, society, whatever, because we have no divine grounding or whatever, is ultimately just our own preferences and isn't actually rooted in anything objective, and we need some sort of objective standard, and that objective standard is a god? Is that where we're going with this?
No, not me.
Okay.
Not me.
Great. Okay, cool. Because that's where this usually goes. I just wanted to get away from that. That's great.
Okay. No, I'm not, even though I'm in the category of theist, and I know that can be confusing, I'm more in the line of a transcendentalist. I don't necessarily believe in a creator or a Judeo-Christian God. That's not my ball game. I'm just trying to spy something out here about, and we're going to get to science and cognitive dissonance. You'll see I'm going in a completely different direction, but I can appreciate you clarifying that, and so we can get that out of the way. Yeah.
I would say that, like, in the way that you seem to be using the word value judgment, sure. Like, you know, anytime we are, you know, greeting somebody, shaking hands, is the example you gave, like, there's a historical reason for doing that, and it has turned into this kind of cultural fluid thing. But at the end of the day, the point of that, or any other greeting in any other society that doesn't do that, is just to be warm and welcoming and establish a baseline of trust and humanity. And, like, yeah, those are all good things societally, not necessarily concrete anything like that. Just society.
Yeah.
Society's cool, yo.
Right. And so one could say on a certain level of analysis that value judgments are a form of belief. Is that okay with you? That on, yeah.
In the most, like, colloquial, loose, sensu latu, basic level, like, yeah, if we're gonna sit here and try to compare and contrast different concepts as belief systems, it's gonna get real semantic and real weird real fast. So, like,
right.
Sure, just in the spirit in which I am hearing the question, yeah, if you're making a value statement, you are talking about what you believe to be good.
Yeah. Now, it's not, I know this, you know what, I'm reflecting back on myself here, and I hope, for goodness sake, good grief, I'm not setting anybody up here and say, oh, well, look what I got you now. No, I don't swing that way. It's a waste. I've seen people do it. I'm just intrigued. I'm speaking philosophically and trying to understand atheists, trying to understand science philosophically, and that's all she wrote. But okay. So a fun example would be the Earth is The Earth is revolving around the sun. The Earth is revolving around the sun, not because the Earth has a belief about the sun and say, "Hey, this is a good idea," and here I go. No, it's totally based upon dynamics and Newtonian understanding and dynamics. Okay, now if someone would say, okay, well, if you're married, why are you hanging around your wife? Well, it's, you're faithful. In other words, you're in orbit. You're faithful to the marriage. It has nothing to do with gravity. It has to do with meaning, a value judgment that you've made. And so you're keeping in orbit of the marriage. Now, I'm getting closer now to this cognitive dissonance and science, and I'm inching my way. Thank you for your patience. So now, as a scientist, you're both scientists. You know that your personal life is 90% value judgments. It's overflowing with value judgments, and yet, as a scientist, both you and Erin, one a physicist, you're a biologist. You know that this is my value judgment. It's not science. It's not evidence. It's not this whole thing. So here now comes the cognitive.
That's not true.
Oh, okay. No, okay. Then I'll backtrack and please share. Share.
Value judgments.
Yeah.
Value judgments in the way that you are using the term that I make about the world around me, the way that I treat people. The way that I greet people, entertain people, talk to people, what I do for a living, all these things are backed in, like, I have scientific reasons for doing these things. Like, maybe not every single tiny little thing do I have a paper to cite about, but like, you cannot be racist, for example, if you are scientifically literate. Biology teaches you why racism is stupid. Biology teaches you why sexism is stupid. Biology teaches you why homophobia, transphobia is stupid. Biology teaches you why xenophobia is stupid. Like, these are things that I can point to actual reasons why I can be a good person scientifically, as well as just talking about cultural benefit. And like, here's what we can see from the statistics of like which cultures, which civilizations are prospering and flourishing. So you could say that like my interest in being a good person and helping to foster a good society and make people suffer less, that's a baseless value judgment, which is what I was asking earlier. Are you saying that this is all just ultimately my preference? You said no, but like, as far as like my behavior being non-scientific, no, that's not accurate. And I don't think Erin would be able to say the same thing either.
Okay. Yeah, I may have slipped up there in communication or how I want to deliver this. But let's go to what you just said. It's stupid. Now, that's a kind of value judgment itself. In other words, what you're saying by the word stupid is that it's not productive. It's not productive.
I mean that it goes against any kind of evidence and reason. Like, take racism, for example. It requires you to be illiterate to like where humans came from, where different skin colors come from, what race actually is. You have to not know that race is not a biological thing in the first place. It's a purely social category with no real meaningful biological backing. You have to then totally misunderstand like statistics in terms of like crime, poverty. You have to be ignorant of history. You have to be ignorant of like social pressures that are going on right now. You have to live in an ignorant, self-important bubble to believe that different races of people have different capabilities, different propensities to different levels of crime, poverty, behaviors, whatever like that. You have to just completely be ignorant of science. So it is a stupid belief system because not only is it unproductive and unhelpful, it also requires you to just not know a lot of shit about humans.
Yes. And so that's where the word stupid is coming from, is meaning that you're in a state of ignorance. So
largely willful and harmful ignorance is what I would call stupid in this case. So it's not a value judgment. Unless, again, you are saying that I'm placing an arbitrary value on being educated.
Oh, yeah, we don't have to go there.
Cool.
All right. I know I brought up the example of marriage, and if any of you guys are married, I don't know, but you know that gravity is making the Earth go around the sun. It doesn't have any meaning to it. The reason why you're honoring the marriage, if you are somebody, I'm speaking generically, rhetorically, that you're in orbit with that marriage because of a meaning factor, not because of a science and evidence factor, but because there was a choice made. You're making choices on a daily basis, and those choices are based on value judgments like love. You could use the word
meaning?
love.
And love is not love is not a value judgment. And what do you mean by meaning?
Well, meaning would be something has meaning to you because it has psychological and emotional value.
Okay, so you mean personal meaning. You don't mean objective meaning.
Right. I don't even think that there's objective meaning. I think that there are objective facts, dynamics, movements, and things like that. In nature, nature moves in a certain way. There are certain.
Yes, I stay in orbit around my wife because the chemicals that produce the feelings of love and all these things are not meaningful objectively. And they just are things. It is just a chemical reaction. It just so happens that she is the person who gives me this chemical reaction. And so we make each other happy, and that makes our lives more rich and more fulfilling. It makes me more effective. It makes me a better person. It makes me more productive in my job. Like lots and lots of reasons I can point to, objective and subjective reasons that I can point to as to why my marriage is pretty fucking dope, if I don't say so myself. Where does this get us? Where are we going here? Let's skip to the end. It's been 13 minutes, and I don't know what we're talking about yet.
Okay. Yeah, I know. I don't mean to frustrate you, but I'm
not frustrated. I'm just waiting for the point.
Okay. The point is the last two are maybe a little difficult here, and that is science and cognitive dissonance. So you've answered part of my question. You said, okay, well, it works for you. It works for you, and you can totally account for this objectively. You know, it's just working. It works, just like science works. So we value science because it works. It's there. We can see it, observe it, and so like your marriage, you're saying whatever the chemicals are. Yeah, it works. And so that's what you're saying. You may have answered the whole question tonight. So there is no cognitive dissonance. You know it's chemicals. You know that this is a chemical game of sorts, and that so Gary, your question, and again, it's not a gotcha. It is. You're asking about atheists and scientists. Okay, you're getting to the marriage, we're getting to value judgments, but there is no problem here. I just said to you, Gary, you know what you just said, Forrest, it just works. And so, okay, is that how we can sum it up there? I don't want to take up any more time. So that's how you would sum it up. Gary, there's no problem here. It just works. And you don't need necessarily value judgments and meaning and all the rest of it.
I wouldn't use those words, but if that gets us to a logical conclusion, okay.
I'm again, as I said, I was very honest to begin with. I'm just trying to understand atheists and scientists and how they view the world, and where do value judgments come into that. And
we haven't even covered, just to be clear, we haven't covered any value judgments here, have we?
Yeah, I think we covered a whole bunch of them, especially when you said, she makes me happy, the marriage makes me happy. When you say it makes me happy, that's a value judgment.
How? What person doesn't want to be happy?
There's nothing wrong with the
Happiness-
value judgment.
Happiness is good for you, like physically. The happiness is good for your body. You are healthier if you are
Okay.
happier. Like there's
Okay.
At the very
no
least,
part
it's a
of
fact. If saying we can at least go and say, hey, it is a fact that people who are in stable marriages say that they are happier more often than those who are either in dysfunctional marriages or outside of marriage. We could at least potentially gather evidence like that, so we can still be objective even about happiness by going around and asking people, does X make you happy?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, and that's what I was just saying. I think Forrest summed it up, and you did too just then, that it just works. So, in other words, you don't even need a value. You don't even need a value judgment. It just
when you're talking about it just works in terms of science. We're talking about like actual like objective things that we can all agree on, and when we're talking about it just works in terms of like emotions, there's no longer like. And like, I guess there are objective things there, but like, I don't know. I feel like saying it just works is very reductive. But fuck, dude, I don't know. I still don't get the point of what we're going for here. Besides, like, yeah, people can be happy without a belief in magic, and still have a good reason to be happy.
Yes. I just noticed. It's just a conversation. It's not belligerence. It's an exploration. I don't know what it's like to be an atheist and just work on pure science in life. I don't know. So I'm calling just
dope.
to explore that. Yeah.
It's pretty dope. You should check it out.
And that's it. And I just wanted to know what you think of value judgments and how they fit in.
We haven't covered any. Yeah, we haven't covered any value judgments, and so I still don't know what even we would be talking about if we were. Aaron, do you have anything at the end of this call for Gary?
If we're going to talk about science and value judgments, I mean, the thing that comes to mind is what we decide to focus on in terms of what science we study. So I study physics. Forrest wastes his time with things that are not physics. That's a value judgment on my part. It just happens to be objectively true. I'm joshing here, but besides, where are we putting our focus? The value that comes from science is objectively visible in that we see it makes right predictions about a whole bunch of things. It improves. It produces models that do an even better and better job of explaining or of predicting things about the universe. And insofar as we're to say there's a value involved, is we value true, justified beliefs, which we call knowledge. If we value knowledge and science produces knowledge, that's why we value science. God's not required, or magic's not required.
Even with that, I would even say like, even that isn't a purely value judgment, because I think it's pretty obvious to say that if you believe more true things than false things, your life is more likely to have a happy outcome. Like you're going to have a better time in this world if you're looking for the truth and relying on the truth and caring about whether or not things you believe are true. So even then, I agree with what you're saying. Like it is a value judgment to decide what we study, but the fact that we study in the first place is and even deciding what we study. Maybe somebody's like feels like it's just they're like, hey, this actually works better. I like biology because I can do shit like cure cancer. You like physics, so you can do stuff like look through telescopes for whatever reason. And so, like by the end of the,
I can cure cancer. It's kind of cool with my physics. I can use antimatter to attack cancer cells. So
you know what? We haven't tried it yet. Maybe that's what it is. Anyway, Gary, this has been weird, but I appreciate the call. Thank you for talking to us for a little while, and I hope we helped you in some way.
Okay, thanks, guys.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Good night.
We crawled somewhere, but maybe we got there.
I'm a little bit uncertain. I get the feeling, where he might be trying to go with this is saying we do science because it works. Maybe the claim is belief in God, do that because it works. My rebuttal to that would be, no, it doesn't, because people can't agree on if God exists or not, what he wants, what she wants, what it wants, if it wants anything, what things will get you get boons or busts from the deity, a bazillion things that we are all very wrong about, apparently. and
Yep.
don't really have much to show for it. So that would at least be my hypothetical rebuttal.
There's a tiny gnat that has been buzzing all about my business for that entire call, and it's driving me up a fucking wall, dude. Let's talk to. We've got two people left. One of them an atheist, has been waiting for a very long time, and the other one is a theist who just got here about 20 minutes ago. Let's talk to this atheist first. Get them knocked out because they've been here for over an hour.
One other quick thing, Gary, for the future, if you are going to compare planetary orbits and our marriages, that may not be the wisest because, as someone mentioned in the comments, are you setting us up for like a yo mama or your wife so fat sorts of jokes? And we would like to avoid those implications, just for future reference.
I was proud of myself because I was talking about how love is all just chemicals, and I wanted to say something like, I'm going to go give my wife some chemicals or something. I don't know what I meant by it. I was going to make it a sex joke, but I didn't. I just didn't want to get there with it, and I should be applauded for being so mature, so incredibly mature today. Let's talk to Pepper, pronouns they and them, calling in all the way from Australia, who wants to talk about free will and determinism. Pepper, you're on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing today?
Hi, good. How are you?
Never had a bad day.
Bad.
Good. That last call was definitely confusing. I was getting very tired, I can't lie.
There's a lot there.
Before talking about it, I do want to say I've been watching you for years, and I do want to say that as a trans person, your discussions about sexuality and gender on both the line and your channel have helped me so much in realizing that this is a valid thing to experience. I'm not insane or delusional. And religion is really helpful. As I grew up in a religious family and experienced so much religious trauma, it's been really helpful to have these arguments against my conservative Christian family and stuff. It's been really, really good. So thank you so much for that.
Happy to be of service. What can we do for you today?
Like, yeah, determinism and free will. Over the years, I kind of learned the belief that in determinism, like, I think we're all going to make the same decisions based on our environment. How we are making decisions based on every little thing that came before. And I think that for a while, that was like, oh no free will, I turned into fatalism. But then I kind of realized that I treat it more as a who cares, because we're always going to do what makes the most sense in our minds. So I kind of think that in my mind, I don't really care if we have free will or not, because we would make the same decision no matter what. But I just want to know what you think of free will, determinism, all of that.
Do you have a thing, Aaron? Because mine's real stupid.
Well, let's use our free will and determinatively go down the stupid route. No, I would say so much of this discussion comes down to definitions and so much argumentation about that. So I'm going to say free will does 100%. And does not exist, depending on your definition. I don't think our brains do anything that breaks the laws of physics. So everything my brain does is ultimately deterministic in that it is ultimately consistent with prior conditions and churning away at the laws of physics. I may not be able to predict that ultimately because of quantum uncertainty, random particles going through my brain causing weird switches to flip in my brain, assuming my brain works something like a computer. I don't know what happens if a bunch of positrons start going through my brain, but let's not find out the hard way. Nonetheless, we can still talk about free will in ways that are the only ways that are actually important. So, Pepper, I want you to give me $10. You could do that, right?
No, I'm not going to do that.
All right.
I could do it, though.
There's a mafioso right behind you pointing a gun to your head, and he's telling you, you're going to give me $10.
Probably would, yeah.
All right. So, in one of those cases, we would say you had free will. In the other case, we would say you didn't. Even though we're talking a completely deterministic universe, we say there's a difference between choosing on your own will versus being coerced by an outside will. And when it comes to whether it's criminal actions or just, how we conduct ourselves throughout the day, we tend to think this is something real. We can even talk about some people having more self-control than others. Children have less self-control than adults. Adults have less self-control when they've had a few beverages of the adult variety. We can still talk about something like free will, even if everything is ultimately deterministic. So we realize, all right, we have something like free will, and that's the only thing that matters, and that's what's worth adjusting and trying to control as we careen through this crazy deterministic universe.
Yep, I 100% fully agree with that. That's a much better explanation of my exact thought process than I could ever give. Amazing. I think it's definitely just about definition. Like, what do you count as free will? Can you make, if putting the same exact situation down to the microscopic details, could you make a different decision? I think that some people think free will is bad. I'd say definitely not, in terms of can you make a choice? Yeah.
I think even if you were to take the very Robert Sapolsky look of it, of like, whatever action I just did right now, you can look back to what was going on in my brain a millisecond before, all the way back to the past couple of minutes. How annoyed am I? Back to the past couple of hours. What's my blood sugar like? Back to the past couple of days. What's how much sleep have I been getting? What kind of how's my health? Back to the past few weeks. How's my marriage? How's my relationship? How's my job? How's whatever? Back to the past several years of like what kind of economic status do I have? What kind of social status do I have? Back to the beginning of my life. How did my parents raise me? Back to their lives. How did their parents raise them? Back to like a cultural thing going back thousands of years. Were we like a pastoralist, like an honor society? What kind of thing influenced that? Back to early human evolution, back to all the way to the beginning of the universe. And all of these things can line up to this one action. At the end of the day, you can still choose in your life what kind of ideas and thoughts and whatnot you surround yourself with. And you can maybe even argue that even having that concept is something that you would need to be exposed to. But like, you can decide what you expose yourself to, how many new thoughts you have, how many new people you allow around you, how many board games you play and books you read and different options and alternatives for various situations you allow yourself to entertain, preparing you for whatever situation may come along to allow you to make better choices. So even if you want to say everything has this deterministic pathway up into this very single moment where I'm at right now, I can expand the deterministic possibilities of this moment. And that in itself is a kind of free will too. And so like, yeah, dude, it's real fucking weird. And I like the idea of like, what is it? Compatibilism, something, soft determinism, where you like make, individual moral,
which is exactly it.
Yeah, in individual moral judgments, individual moments. You can say, everything has a precursor event, and every action has a cause, and blah blah blah. But in this very instant, I have a choice over my own actions, and all these things that led up to me. I like the very ancient Stoicism philosophy of saying, like, I am not in control of what happens to me. I am in control of how I react to it, and so. Thing happens, gets up to me at this very instant. I now have a choice to make of how I am going to continue this deterministic domino. Which domino am I going to knock down next? That's kind of how I feel it.
Yeah. I kind of, in my brain, I think as I briefly said, it's a thing of I'm always going to make the most logical decision in my mind. So I do have a choice. It's just I'm always going to make what I always think is the correct one. That's why in hindsight we think, oh, I should have done that. You didn't know that in the past. You still did what you thought was the best.
Right.
It's really interesting.
And that's for
me.
Conflicts with. I feel.
Oh, sorry. You go.
Oh no, I was just gonna say I agree, and I think at the end of the day, it really falls into this kind of like post hoc sort of thing where you are just looking reflexively, or you're looking in the rearview mirror for your entire life and saying, well, that had to happen because blah, 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 blah. And it could have been this, but it wasn't because blah, 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 blah. And it's just, it gets real unfalsifiable real fast. Because like at the end of the day, if I could prove to you every single thing is determined, you could then say, okay, well, you use your free will to prove that to me. And if anything that I prove that I had the free will to do a thing, you say, oh well, you didn't control your neurons firing; they controlled you doing the free thing. And it's just, I don't know. It's not my area of expertise. There's probably some neuroscientist out there who's screaming at their computer right now, and I hope they call in and tell me some stuff. But like, as for right now, I feel like it's really philosophical and borderline unfalsifiable, and I don't know how to even begin taking it any further than that. It's also not anywhere even close to what I study, so who knows?
Yeah. I kind of called in hoping you would just have an opinion, because I think you're someone I respect, and you have a lot of interesting perspectives on religion, especially, which I've taken into my own life and helped other people with as well. I want to know what you think about free will. Yeah, no, that was actually like really, really insightful. Thank you.
Right on. Fun conversation, dude. Thank you so much for calling in, Pepper. I appreciate you.
Yeah. No problem. That was really fun.
Have an awesome rest of your day. Bye.
Yeah.
The worst we've had is a kind of boring call. The worst we've had is a kind of boring call. Yeah.
I just realized I missed a perfectly good pun, and I really feel terrible.
Well, we can't let you. So what was it?
Well, I set this, Pepper up to, having this mafioso pointing a gun at him, and I realized that would be a salt and pepper.
There you go. Also, Pepper used they, them pronouns, you fucking asshole. Hashtag cancel Aaron Adair.
I do apologize. I missed that. That's a good call out on me.
No, I'm just teasing you. I don't think they would have cared. But
either way, I need to notice these things. I do actually apologize for failing that.
That's very cool of you. I do it all the time too, and I love being. I call myself out for it. It's very fun. Let's talk to our last call of the night. Let's talk to Joe, who wants to talk about the uniqueness of the Bible. Joe, you are our final call. I hope it's a fun one, and you're on the line with Forrest and Aaron. How are you doing today?
Oh, super. I'm great. Hope you guys are well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to talk with you guys about the uniqueness of the Bible as opposed to basically all other religious texts. And but I guess I'm interested in kind of establishing a baseline so that we can compare and not be talking past each other too much. Do you guys both believe in like an absolute truth?
Sure. For lack of a better word.
Okay.
But Aaron, you look like you were about to say something more interesting than me.
I just don't know enough of what we might mean by that. I can talk about true and false propositions, and I think that's enough to move forward.
What physicists often call capital T truth is what I usually hear, especially from your field.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah. So, like, you guys are well aware of some of the stats and figures of the Bible. Like, it's written by over 40 authors over a span of like anywhere from 12 to 1500 years, 3 different continents, all sorts of different cultures, everything from shepherds being the authors to kings to doctors. And yet the Bible has a clear and consistent theme. It has a clear and consistent use of type scenes. It has a clear and consistent use of concepts.
That's definitely not something I'm going to agree with. I mean, I can't even get past the second chapter of the book to
you had me in the first half.
Problems with that.
You had me initially. Yes, it was written by a lot of people, but that lack of univocality also produces a lack of consistent messaging.
I would also disagree with the dates over which the stories are alleged to have been written or by the peoples, because the date range that you are giving is assuming a lot about like things being written by Moses. I don't even think Moses was an historical figure. Things being written by kings. It sounds like you're talking about King David writing the Psalms. That's also a later tradition. We don't have good reason to believe that in particular. So I wouldn't even agree with that. I would say the Bible has many authors and wouldn't go anything beyond that, because who those authors are, how many there are, how much editing has gone through over what time period is all extremely contentious, and you can find a large volume of argumentation about all those difficulties. And I don't know if we want to get into all of that in our last call tonight.
I feel like, especially
So,
talking about kings, like King James specifically, altering the text for his political and agenda and his cultural beliefs, like that's a huge one. If we're talking about kings, like holy fuck, the whole reason the idea of homosexuality is in the Bible is because of King James being like, I don't like the gays.
okay, well, that's totally erroneous about that, him being the only one to put homosexuality in the text. I'm not sure which hill to die on over here, but like, do you believe that Joshua was a historical character?
I don't have any reason to, because the narrative that he is placed into itself is not historical. It's basically the stuff that happens after the Exodus and then into the conquest, and there's no archaeology to back that up. In fact, quite the opposite.
Oh, quite. I completely disagree with that. That they found the ruins of Canaan, and that those ruins purport exactly the account that was given in Joshua, that the wall.
No, let's start with Jericho.
Huge foundation fell outward. Yeah, Jericho.
So first off,
the walls
that's
of
actually
Jericho
what you get with
fell
earthquakes.
outward.
Second off, so first off, you can get earthquakes having things
Strangely
fall
enough,
down.
no other city in that.
So
You're
before you go
let
off and say a
Aaron
whole bunch of
respond,
things that are
Joe.
false, I'm going to give you some truths here. So first off, the walls did not say in the text that they came down and became a ramp or anything you're going to be saying there. That's nothing in the text. That is imposed on it after seeing the results of the walls collapsing. Secondly, that is also completely consistent with, and what the experts on this would agree, is that this was due to most likely earthquake activity. Third, the timing of the destruction of Jericho is decades, if not centuries, before any of the alleged times that the Exodus conquest story was supposed to have happened. Fourthly, if you're talking about other destructions throughout the Holy Land, those also don't line up in a short period of time, that they're spread out over centuries, that some of the cities that allegedly Joshua took were actually taken by the Egyptians. And we know that because the Egyptians wrote it down and told us they took this city in this year by this pharaoh. So, no, Joe, you're just wrong. And the archaeological community on this has been pretty consistent for decades, saying there's no evidence for the Exodus or the conquest in terms of the archaeological record. At best, maybe a small group of people escaped Egypt, and this is where the story is developed. That's like the only real hypothesis actively talking about by critical scholars.
I reject all of that, and the tone in your voice shows that you also reject that. You went to a very stressed out tone in that entire rant, because
you're saying my tone
falsifies science? Jericho. I'm saying that your tone shows that you know what you're saying is incorrect. Jericho absolutely was a
you're saying I'm lying.
City. All of the walls fell.
If you're going to call in and say I'm lying because of my tone, you're going to have to back that up a whole lot better than coming in and riling me up with straight up lies about me.
So would you call me a liar if I told you that I have
you just said something false about
with
me.
The one true
that
God?
Makes you a liar if you don't take it back. Because I'm telling you, what you're saying is false. And Joe, this is very simple. If you start saying and making claims about me, and I point out, no, you're false about that, and then you accuse me of being a liar, I'm saying, no, that means you're the one who is now telling untruths, uncaring about the facts. That makes you the liar. So I'm going to say, just make a minor apology and we can move on, rather than becoming accusatory against each other and start doing tone policing. I'd rather not do that on this call.
Understood. I think that, I don't know how to apologize exactly for this. I think that I shouldn't say I know what you think. That is being dishonest. I don't know what you think. So I apologize for assuming that I know what you think. I will certainly apologize for that.
There we go.
All right. I totally accept that. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm baffled at the concept that you don't think the conquest of Canaan was a genuine thing. We've got, people were saying, it was fake because the Hittites didn't even exist. We haven't found them. And then we just keep on digging up things that prove that the accounts in Scripture are true. all the way into the 1970s, people said, "Oh, it couldn't be true because we haven't found the Hittites." And then all of a sudden, we found their capital city.
No one was saying that in the 1970s.
But
This is what happens when you get your info from apologists who get paid to lie to you. And now I am going to call out liars because
you're very stressed out right now,
various
Aaron.
organizations
I'm sorry to stress you
out
out
there
so much.
who say, actually, Joe, you're going to have to shut up for a minute.
Why
Because
are you guys
here's the
so
thing.
insecure?
You come in with lies
Why are you
and
so
think
insecure?
you have the truth. Here's the thing. What you're coming in with is false. And it is a falsehood that is repeated, especially by various creationist groups, evangelical groups, who need this narrative to keep funding their nonsense. The fact of the matter is, if you go and talk to the actual scholars who do the digs at places like Jericho, if you do look at the evidence of the actual archaeologists who do this kind of work, they're going to tell you the opposite. Now, if you want some sources, I'll start off with one that is now a little bit old, but it's still pretty much the consensus position. Israel Finkelstein and Neil Silverman's book, The Bible on Earth, and pointing out, hey, we have no evidence for the conquest. We have no evidence for the Exodus. We don't have evidence for like internal rebellion. It looks like the Israelites were basically Canaanites, and in the same way that other people group evolved, I'm using that term a little bit loosely, but developed from the previous people groups there, that looks to be where the quote unquote Israelites came from. Now, I'm also a bit more familiar because I'm actually published in this sorts of areas. I'm actually currently working on a larger book project on this sort of thing. Among the things I have done is actually looked at the traditions of Moses and where they developed, and I have actually published in the peer-reviewed literature on this. I'm a member of the Society of Biblical Literature. I'm actually going to the meeting here in Boston in just a few weeks where I'm going to be talking about developments in the Hebrew language over time. So I am not talking about this out of ignorance. I am not talking this out of dogmatism. I am talking about this about what has actually been far and away the consensus position in biblical studies for decades. And you're coming in with the sorts of tripe that, unfortunately, those who refuse to follow that evidence are going to tell you. And that's the sort of stuff that actually gets me riled up, because when people go and lie to the public and then have you spread that out as the gospel truth, you're basically, continuing and promoting something that you may not know is actually not true. But you're coming in forcefully with that, claiming what scholarship was saying in the 1970s, which I doubt you have actually read for yourself, so you can only know this based on what other people have told you. Fact of the matter is, in the 70s, we knew the Hittites existed because we had already records from the 19th century about the Hittites. This is, like I say, the sort of thing that is getting passed through some sort of evangelical apologist telephone game, and it's not how you do rigorous scholarship. And I'm asking you to not assert what you don't know with the certainty that the people who are paid to act that certain are doing.
Okay, so you don't want me to call in and say I'm pretty sure of this fact, like your whole response.
If you can't actually show it's a fact, what you're doing though is repeating things that are not true.
Oh my goodness! You guys are so insecure tonight.
Truth.
What is going on?
Oh my god! Hey, really quickly,
Joe,
just before we move any further, Joe, what was actually just said to you, just to make we're all on the same page, is don't come in making claims you don't have good reason to believe and have good evidence for. And when someone who actually has expertise in the area corrects you, at least be willing to entertain and understand and ask intelligent questions about that. I'm going to be straight up with you. This has been a really good show. I've been having a great time. If your entire apologetics here is going to be rage baiting and you mad bro and all this shit, I don't have the time for it. Nobody's insecure. Aaron is passionate about what he's talking about because he studies it for a living, and you are coming in with things that are known not to be true but are published by confident charlatans, and you're coming at him as if you have some authority here, and that's fucking annoying. It's really just arrogant and gross. So nobody's insecure, nobody's mad. You do not have the crystal ball in front of you that tells you somebody's tone secretly intimates to you that they actually don't believe a thing. All of that is just fucking lazy, rage-baiting, troll apologetics. I'm not going to put up with it tonight. We're having too good of a night. So if you want to have a serious adult conversation about this and engage with what Aaron is actually saying, with facts, with evidence, with a reason for what you believe, awesome. if you're calling in just to say, "Oh my God, you're talking loud. That much means you're stressed. You're so mad. That means I win." It's just I'm not into talking to a fucking 13-year-old tonight. It doesn't sound like fun to me.
Okay, I got it. I got it. Would you entertain a different topic?
If you're cool with just moving on from this one, sure. If we're going to drop this conversation, we can move on to a different conversation.
I mean, you've basically told me that I don't know anything, and everything Aaron says is rock solid, and I can't even bring an objection to it because I don't get paid to learn about that.
Is that what we actually said? Is that what we actually said? Or is that... No, it's not at all. It's not at all.
Not within 100 miles. No.
Yeah, that is you being all up in your feelings about what was just said. That's not actually what was just said.
And Joe, you can also check on what things I say. So for example, I had said, hey, we knew about the Hittites in the 19th century. I just went over to Wikipedia and it confirmed what I was just saying. So what I'm also saying, you can also go and check on sources like that, which also means whoever told you that in the 1970s, people were doubting the Hittites are just wrong. So are you going to continue to listen to people who are demonstrably wrong and not listen to people that actually you can verify they have said things correctly?
Yeah, I will definitely verify it. I'm wondering if maybe I'm exactly like 100 years off. Was it 1870?
So my understanding is the evidence popping up in the archaeological record for the Hittites was happening in the second half of the 19th century.
Okay. All right. So I may have just mistaken, one number there. Sorry. Sorry for that mistake. But yeah, I mean,
it's also worth noting that the Hittites that are described in the Bible also doesn't actually match the Hittites that we know from archaeology. And especially because the Bible describes the Hittites in a context that we would call the Iron Age, and the Hittite civilization ended at pretty much at the end of what we call the Bronze Age collapse. So the Bible's right that a group of people known as the Hittites existed, but it only seems to know about them as some sort of vague memory that it puts into the wrong time frame.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've seen documentaries about what they have found as far as Joseph's family in Egypt, and they've come up with the conclusion that
you've come up with claims of people saying that. Now, for example, what they will do, and because I've seen these sorts of claims, they'll claim, hey, here is a person in Egypt with a Semitic name in some sort of administrative role. And they'll say, hey, and it's a Semitic name. That sounds just like Joseph, who has a Hebrew name. All right. On the other hand, when you also put in context, actually, there were lots of Semitic peoples living in Egypt and part of Egyptian administration over centuries before any people group known as Israel can be found in the historical record. So what happens very often in apologetics is that you will get this piece of information, have it completely decontextualized, and maybe along with a few other half-truths or real great stretchings of the evidence to make things fit, and ignore many other things that would either recontextualize that it doesn't become evidence, or ignore all the stuff that makes that impossible. Among the things that will make things a bit difficult, in the story of Joseph, besides him getting that awesome shirt, among other things, he and his family are able to take up residency in the land of Goshen, in the land of Ramesses, and that's a problem because we know when the Pharaoh Ramesses existed, and that was centuries after where the Bible puts our friend Joseph. So things like that make us realize, okay, whatever records that they have about Egypt aren't all that great, and when they try putting the stories in those time frames, they only start to fit if you squint really hard, make things blur, and ignore all the details that kind of make that untenable. So again, please be cautious about what documentaries, especially by apologetic groups, will be showing you versus what is the best collection of evidence that experts can provide to you about a position. I also need to be careful. One thing I want to be careful. Are there any people with qualifications who would argue for the truth of the Exodus? Yes, they do exist. And I don't want to say that nobody believes that. But from what I can tell, they are in a minority position, and it is ultimately driven by faith rather than evidence. And I say that because I have tried to read their cases and find that they are lacking, while the consensus position has significant evidence that it doesn't have to explain away.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing that I was going to point out is that, like, you say I watched a documentary. My first question is, who made that documentary? Because Answers in Genesis makes documentaries. You know, I mean, like Ancient Aliens is billed as a documentary a lot of the time. And so when you can go out and find, for example, like you can find lists of like 1,000 scientists who disagree with evolution. Doesn't mean that it's their claims are any kind of credible, right? And in the same way here, I'm sure you can find some scholar out there that disagrees with what Aaron is saying. Doesn't mean what they're saying is actually backed up by evidence. It's just a faith-based claim, like, you know, everything else.
Yeah, I guess the big hole in what you guys have said in my mind is that the people who would have supposedly been just making up these narratives, they had zero motivation to do that. There was no upside to them just throwing these things in here. All of the heroes in the Bible are made to look foolish. They're made to stumble. It's clear that there was no human
just like
agenda in writing the Bible.
Right.
The
it's
same
just
thing
like
is true
any
about King
other
Arthur.
good literature. Yeah. Frodo fucks up.
In fact,
Han Solo fucks up.
Yeah. And if we want to stick with antiquity, I just submitted an article in Folklore Research, of all things, because I need too many hobbies, but it's about a particular subgroup of hero stories known as the Raglan Tragic Hero. And what does this hero do? Oh, he's this amazing, guy with like all these supernatural abilities. He saves everybody, but then he does something to fuck things up and gets, kicked out, killed. He does something that ultimately ends his reign ingloriously. And this is a super common trope. So having people like King David doing something that screws things up, that Solomon does something that screws things up, this is not that unusual. And in some ways, it's kind of expected, because here's the thing. If you are making up stories about this glorious past, you have to explain, well, why are things crummy now? What happened?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to create a story of why they screwed up. What did they do that made it so things aren't great anymore? This is unfortunately very common.
Yeah, it's a big thing
Yeah,
in like
but
a lot of
again,
other
get back to
mythologies
the
as well.
idea
Like
of motive.
Greek mythology is full of that. And Egyptian as well, if I remember correctly. Egyptian and Greek mythology are both full of that kind of motif.
Yeah, that's fine, but those mythologies almost always set up an elite class to rule the other people, and their narratives fit that. The Hebrew scriptures do not set up any sort of an elite class. There is no one group of people who have rights and authority over everybody else by means of
Sure they
their
do.
beliefs,
The entire
by means of
Aaronite
their
priesthood.
lineage.
No, like the
Yeah,
Levites,
and they
the
don't
Aaronite priesthood
even
have that
get the
special
rights
status.
of private property. They don't even have the rights of private property. They were not.
They don't need to, because they actually get everything provided by the state. Everyone is supposed to be sacrificing to them. They basically live off the largesse of the rest of the country, that pretty much they get a cut of the taxes. You don't need private property when the public got property given to you. Is kind of awesome by comparison to the average person.
No, I mean it's exactly the same thing as any sort of civil service. The group pays for the living expenses of those people.
But that's a special status. You just said there isn't one, and I'm pointing out there's an entire priesthood that is patrilineal, so you can't just work your way up to become a priest. It's like, no, you are a priest because your daddy was a priest. That's the whole idea of the Levite priesthood system.
Yeah, but there's nothing in scripture about them being an elite. They're not considered more holy. They have the exact same clean and unclean rituals.
The
they
high
have the exact
priest
same
isn't
laws.
holy? Like the high priest isn't special?
It sounds like you have you're just like kind of playing with the word elite to mean your specific, like, well, this is what I would think is good, but Aaron is explaining like a different social class that certainly has a more luxurious life than the farmer down the road. And so just because they don't have XYZ specific thing that you are calling elite, that's just you implementing your cultural norm onto that culture over there.
I don't think either of you understand the priesthood very well if you think that they had a life of luxury. They were basically resident farmers farming on land that they didn't own. And when they weren't farming, they were called into duty in shifts to serve at the temple as butchers, and they were paid at that time by the sacrifices that were brought. And they ate the worst of the leftovers of the meat. In fact, there's a whole story about some of the priests who rebelled against that because they didn't like the portions that they were getting from the sacrifice, and God killed them as a result. They were given the yucky parts of the meat left over.
Let's say that's true. Let's say that's true. Let's say that they just had a fucking horrible life. Did they also have elevated social status and more clout as a result of that life? Did their word carry more weight than an average person? Did they have any kind of play or particular power in politics and socioeconomics? I think those things also would factor into this same statement. So, like, yeah, dude, you can say, like, you know, look at our society today and say, oh, you know, senators have such a hard life. You know, they have to go to this shitty job and all these things. And we can point to other areas in which they are enriched. Same thing with the military. Same thing with you know, teachers. We can say that teachers are greatly renowned in our society and yet live this horrible life. Like this, all you're doing is you're picking arbitrary metrics by which you are assigning what you're calling luxury here. Which, you know, fine, we can throw away the word luxury, but you are assigning arbitrary metrics by which you are determining what is a good life or a bad life, and then implementing that cultural heuristic onto a totally different culture from thousands of years ago.
No, but I mean, what I'm doing is pushing back against your claim that this was the group of people who had something to benefit from these erroneous claims about history and how they got to Canaan.
Are you saying there's no benefit to being the priestly caste? Are you saying that actually people who are priests would rather leave that? They'd rather would be muckrakers?
Also, even beyond that, like the idea
I have no idea.
The idea that these scholars gain nothing from publishing things that are wrong, that are like painting the stories of the Bible the way that you, Joe, are internalizing them. That's also ridiculous, because as we covered in the first couple of calls in the show where we talked about cognitive dissonance and whatnot, even if those folks, if these scholars say something that is just totally not backed by the evidence at all, totally goes against everything that the academic consensus relies on, they get laughed out of their field because of it. They have no other choice but to work with some fucking group like Answers in Genesis or some other cult, right? Even if that is the case, they are still getting an extreme benefit because of their personal beliefs. If they are pursuing religious knowledge in this way, then and they're biasing their interpretation of the data by their religious knowledge, they are getting a tremendous amount of satisfaction, and they believe that they are going to get spiritual rewards as well. So it's not like they have to win $1 million here. They are getting the benefit that they think they're getting. It's a placebo effect. Who's that one scientist? I'm going to pull up their name really quick. Geologist who studied under Stephen Jay Gould, who said he's a PhD scientist, studied under one of the most famous evolutionary biologists of all time. And he said, if 100% of the evidence goes against the Bible, I will be the first to admit it, but I will still be a literal 6-day creationist because that's what the scripture compels me to believe. So, like, this is a trained scientist, trained by one of the most famous scientists in history, who is out here saying, I don't care if it gets me kicked out of academia. I don't care if I have to go against all of my training. I will be the first one to tell you the evidence is against my position, but this is what the Bible says, so that's what I believe it says, and that's what I believe the world is. So, like, it's a silly question to say, what are these people gaining from it? They're gaining the kingdom of heaven or whatever the fuck else they believe in.
That's a completely erroneous analogy, because we're talking about thousands of years later. I'm talking about the people at the time who are writing this, who are living in the day, who are going through the sacrificial system. You're telling me that they had religious beliefs, stuff up, and I'm wondering what did they have to gain from it? And the Bible makes it clear they had nothing to gain. Jesus, or the writer of Hebrews,
so the people who wrote the books say what was true about what they were gaining or not gaining. Mind you, it's most likely people who would be members of the priesthood who would actually be literate and who would actually transmit and potentially alter these texts.
So why did those members of the priesthood go out of their way to discredit both Moses, Aaron, his immediate sons, and so many other people as being actually less than the common man in their holiness? Moses never made it into the promised land because of disobedience. Aaron's sons were burned with fire because of
Are you familiar with the stories of King Arthur? So,
I mean,
are you
yes,
familiar with the
vaguely. I
stories
haven't
of King
studied it.
Arthur?
Yeah,
So,
vaguely, yes.
why would the English create a story where their king screws up and basically causes the collapse of Camelot? Why would they do that? Why not have their great founding kingdom and king actually be awesome and create a lineage that would actually last rather than having it die off because Arthur screwed up?
I don't know. I suspect they were trying to get close to the truth. Although, I mean, I know.
The thing is, we don't think there probably
I don't
was
know
a
for
King
sure
Arthur.
if King Arthur was entirely mythological. I'm not entirely sure of his historicity.
It's a debatable thing.
You-
Like nobody knows for sure,
Okay.
but nonetheless, it's pretty hard then to say that people are trying to get back to the truth because a lot of the sources we have for King Arthur are pretty much medieval novels. Like Geoffrey of Monmouth was, pretty much like saying, "Hey, here are these other French stories." Actually, our earliest records about stories of King Arthur are in French, and then English folks like Jeremy Malworth comes along and basically is like, nope, now we're going to change a few things up. These are not the sorts of things you do based on historiography. It's what you do for storytelling. And again, part of what you want to do is explain, hey, if everything was glorious in the past, why are things not as glorious now? You have to have an explanation for that. So you need to say something what is not great about these heroes or something that came after them to explain why we're not in the golden age anymore. If you are saying these people are perfect and they had an everlasting kingdom and you're living in that kingdom and you're like, this ain't everlasting, your story is not going to catch on. It has to at least comport to what you see in your own life or to even begin to be believed.
Also, the person I was talking about, I just found the quote. It was Kurt Wise. Kurt Wise, who got his doctorate from Harvard University. He was a geologist and a paleontologist. So he studied the history of Earth and the history of life. And this is a direct quote from him. Although there are scientific reasons for accepting a young Earth, I am a young Earth creationist because that is my understanding of the scripture. As I shared with my professors years ago when I was in college, if all the evidence in the universe turns against creationism, I would be the first to admit it, but I would still be a creationist because that is what the word of God seems to indicate. So you can ask the same question of Kurt Wise here. Why? Why on earth would you get a fucking PhD in this field and work your ass off studying this field just to spend your life telling everyone this field of study makes no sense and that the academia that gave you these credentials can't be trusted? Like, that's a stupid thing to do. It's because he's religious and he has a religious reason to do it. Why did these people say the things they said? I guarantee those people had a culture. I guarantee those people had some religious beliefs. I guarantee those people had a reason that comported with their understanding of the universe and their cultural background and their cultural history that gave them a reason to say these things. It doesn't necessarily mean it was 100% true or false. It's just you're talking about people, and people are people. Even back then, people were people.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the thing is, like, I don't know much about the King Arthur mythology and how that developed. Like, I'm guessing there's nothing in that mythology that just slams the British people entirely, that just makes the English seem like they hardly even deserve to exist as a nation.
Maybe with the Bible being written by so many different authors, maybe with the Bible being written by so many different authors over so many different years, by so many different people with different backgrounds and different agendas, maybe some of them had different opinions of shit and incorporated some of that opinion into the text as they went along. And so maybe the people at that time weren't saying that, but somebody who translated and interpreted it several hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 years ago, who had a different opinion of people of that time, translated it in a way that made sense to them. As we see in different parts of the Bible, where you have like two things that contradict one another because somebody wrote it this way and has been copying it this way for a long time until somebody else came along and said, that doesn't really make sense. So they copied it a little bit differently at a different part, and these two parts contradict each other. And it's somebody later on coming in and harmonizing the older parts that are, are written earlier on. We know that shit happens. So again, you're talking about people that lived thousands of years ago. They were people, dude. And they had agendas and they had motives and they had beliefs and they had ideals and they had religions and they had politics and they had cultures, all sorts of things that would influence what they wrote, why they wrote it, how they translated it, how they interpreted it, what they cut out, what they put in, all sorts of stuff.
And if I also may note,
Oh.
maybe one of the reasons, because again, I'm not going to pretend I know enough about the Arthurian legends of how much do they denigrate the English, and I can also imagine the French sources might say more negative things about the English, but I'd have to go and do some reading about that. But one thing as well is if you are a Hebrew scholar, and especially if you're writing, say, in the 4th or 3rd century BC, your stories of your people is outside forces coming in and conquering, whether it's the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Greeks, all coming in and basically one group after another taking control of your home territory. Your story is trying to explain why that is the case. That's, I mean, part of, like, for example, Ezekiel, who is part of the Babylonian captivity. He says he's writing in Babylon or near Babylon and having these visions from God, in part to explain, hey, God, how come things go crapped up? And part of the explanation has to be, because you dong peoples. You didn't listen to me well enough. So I'm going to fix things eventually, but guess what? You're going to have to make some changes around here. Those sorts of visions, those sorts of stories are trying to explain why things are not going according to plan. And if your story can't explain that everyone in the past was absolutely perfect and you're in this crummy situation, that story is not going to resonate. You need a story that can explain why you are here, and of course, ultimately, how you can get out of it, which is then what Ezekiel is then trying to explain with his visionary experiences, and then later stories also coming along to try to explain, hey, how come we don't have our kingdom restored? Hey, how come we don't have a scion of David ruling us, etc., etc. You have all these expectations of what needs to come to explain the current situation, and that, I think, can explain a lot of development of the biblical tradition. It's also pretty difficult, again, because we're going through all this editing stuff.
Totally
but like I say, it's. What do you mean totally false?
That totally falls flat when you think about what happened when they came back from the exile and how they returned. They returned to the system that Moses and Aaron had set up. They returned to.
That's
they looked
the problem.
At the words in Deuteronomy. They returned to the words in Deuteronomy, and as a people rejoiced that God was rejoicing over them to do them good now that they had come back according to the words of Deuteronomy. These people were not just changing. They weren't just hacking on to
actually, they were changing.
Earlier
That's
scriptures.
The problem. That's actually what the problem is. So I went to my bookshelf, and I went and got this book off my shelf here. Now, are you familiar with archaeologist Jonathan Adler?
No. I mean, I've heard the name, but not enough to know what you're going to be talking about.
So the book I'm holding here was published by Yale a couple of years ago. It's called The Origins of Judaism, and he's going through the archaeological record for, say, hey, what's the earliest evidence that we can see of people following the various Mosaic laws about dietary things, about washing, things like that? What is the evidence on the ground that actually shows that people were following these laws? How far back does it go? And if it changed, when did it change? And his rather thorough survey of that is we don't actually see wide acceptance or wide application of the Mosaic Law until the 2nd century BC, like the 100s, like between 100 and 200 BC. That's the earliest that we really see the Mosaic Laws actually starting to show up in the archaeological record of people actually following those laws.
And that would make complete sense according to the biblical narrative, because they kept getting
no, you just said
handed
when
over
they came
to their
back from
enemies
exile,
because of
they
idolatry.
went back to the laws of Moses. When did the exile end?
Around 500 BC.
And I'm telling you, there's no evidence of those laws being followed for like another 300 years.
And that's an argument from silence.
No. We also have evidence on the ground of showing them not following those laws. When I say, here's a book to read, that's also a sign of what you should be doing, rather than saying you know what the evidence is or the lack of evidence is. Because here's the thing, we actually have people leaving things in the ground, showing us what they actually did do. We see down all the way in southern Egypt, we have Jews down there who basically know nothing of the laws of Moses and have set up their own temple to Yahweh as well as to other gods that they collect taxes for. That we actually have evidence of a priestess conducting things in that temple in Egypt to the Jewish God. We have evidence of coins with images in Judea well into the 4th century BC, even though, images like that are supposed to be banned in the 10 Commandments. We have all this evidence of showing, hey, they're not eating the right kind of fish. They're not doing the kinds of washing that is expected. And we even have like the records of the prophets of various sources and also outside Greek sources saying, here are what these Jewish people are doing, and they also don't conform to the laws of Deuteronomy. So this is not an argument from silence. This is an argument to the best conclusion from multiple lines of evidence, all pointing to the same thing.
What was the name of that author you mentioned? Adler. What was his first name?
Yes. Yonatan, that's spelled Yonatan. It's like Jonathan, but it's closer to the Hebrew pronunciation spelling. And then Adler is Adler. The book is The Origins of Judaism, an Archaeological Historical Reappraisal, and this is part of the Anchor Bible Reference Library. So it's a fairly prestigious printing scholarship. And from what I can tell, most of the scholars have spoken highly of this book. This is not a fringe position by Professor Adler.
Okay. Well, I guess while we're citing experts, you guys have probably already heard of, I know where I'm going with this, Sir Lionel Lecou, by far the best defense attorney ever on record, 245 consecutive murder acquittals. Have you heard of him?
The name doesn't ring a
biblical
bell,
archaeologist?
But yeah.
Say that again?
Is he a biblical archaeologist?
Is he a biblical archaeologist?
No, I'm just throwing out an expert because you threw out an expert at me. I'm throwing out an expert at you.
Is he an expert in biblical archaeology, or is he an expert in the law?
He's an expert in law.
Okay.
Okay.
So his expertise is not in the area of interest.
Yeah. So I'm changing gears a little bit to go to the resurrection narrative of the Bible. And here's an expert.
What does a lawyer teach us about the resurrection of in the Bible?
He claims that the evidence for the resurrection is on such a high order of, I don't remember his exact words, but basically he says that, and he was not a believer. He became a believer upon investigating the evidence we have for the resurrection, that it is above and beyond.
Isn't this the guy they made some movie about
what
a little while
we should
ago?
believe beyond a shadow of a doubt?
You're thinking of the journalist.
That we should take the resurrection as being complete fact and proof.
Okay, great. He's
wondering
not an
if
archaeologist. Just to be clear, he's not an archaeologist.
You don't need to be an archaeologist. No.
He has no, you don't. I agree with that. But we're talking about the people who actually do spend their lives studying this have not seen something that some lawyer saw.
They've not put together the narrative the way the lawyer has put together the narrative.
Wait, are you saying Bible scholars for the last 200, 300 years haven't put together the evidence? It took a lawyer to come along to look at the Bible?
I would say a lawyer with a record like his who looks at the evidence and says it is.
You don't think Bible scholars have been looking at this evidence in the original language for centuries?
Yes, yes, they have, and that's why I'm a Christian.
What do you think is more likely, Joe? Just out of curiosity, if I were to give you this example, and I was talking about anything in science, right? Let's say medicine, right? And I'm saying here's the the cure for cancer is what we're talking about. Is the cure for cancer something we have right now? And I've got all the biomedical scientists, all these people who study biomedical sciences that study cancer for a living, all saying, "Hey, we haven't figured it out yet." And over here, I've got this really, really good plumber. Like, he's the fucking best. And he says that actually we do have the cure for cancer, and it's enemas, and they're just going to save the world. Is it possible?
So, I mean,
the plumber is right?
Do you not see
Absolutely.
how your analogy is completely inane? Do you not see
No,
how
I
your
don't.
analogy is
I think
completely worthless?
what I'm
You're
saying,
comparing a
here's all
plumber's
the people.
discovery of cancer to a defense attorney who is an expert at grilling witnesses, at getting to the truth in claims that do
And
not
here's the
all
thing,
line
Joe.
up,
Joe,
at seeing
None
through
of which
lies,
helps
at
you,
seeing things from multiple perspectives, and
Joe,
sorting it out to
none
get
of
to what is
which,
the common
none
truth.
of which helps you in archaeology. None of the defense attorney grilling witnesses skills are going to be as applicable when we're talking about archaeology as actual archaeologist skills. And so, yeah, I'm being
So
a little bit
I don't know
silly
if you've
here,
got
but it's not accurate at all to say, listen, here's this person from a completely different discipline with a completely different skill set, with a completely different history, a completely different record, who has no training in this area whatsoever, but they're really good at something that's kind of similar to this, and they have an opinion that
What
goes
do you mean
against
kind of
what all
similar?
the experts say, yet grilling a witness
What do you
and
mean
trying
kind
to
of
analyze
similar?
whether I'm literally in the middle of explaining it to you when you continue to interrupt me. Grilling a witness and trying to explain like why someone may be lying is kind of similar to analyzing archaeological evidence, but it's not the fucking same at all. I wonder, what is this defense attorney's grasp of archaeological theory? Is he using cultural historical theory? Is he using processual theory or post-processual theory? What is he using as a framework for his analysis here? Because those are things an archaeologist would be willing to lay out and justify and explain. Or is this guy just saying, I'm good at evidence, here's evidence? Because that's simply not how this works, dude. You're pulling up some guy in a completely different field who may be very impressive, but he's not useful here. Ben Carson, an extraordinary neurosurgeon, really, really great, made history for amazing neurosurgery he's able to do, also believes that the fucking pyramids were grain silos and shit, because that's not his area of expertise. So his brilliance in this area is lost in that area. I'm sorry. You're bringing up a guy as an expert witness who doesn't agree with what the actual experts say. It's not compelling. Does it mean he's absolutely wrong? Maybe not. He might be. I'm asking you what's likely here.
So I didn't realize that an event of a supposed resurrection that is not attested to by pots
Joe,
and
you are actually
artifacts, but by
presupposing what you need to
eyewitnesses.
demonstrate.
I didn't
Because that's
realize
the thing.
that
The
was.
question is, do we actually
Oh my
have
goodness! You guys
witnesses?
can't help yourself interrupting.
Actually, Joe, it's because we need to stop this train because you're taking it down the wrong tracks. We don't actually have witnesses to the event.
We absolutely do have witnesses to the event.
And that's the problem. You are taking the fringe position of a lawyer who doesn't actually know these texts, who probably can't read them in their original language, can't help justify why taking one textual tradition for another, doesn't even know the difference between like Western type and Alexandrian type of text when trying to reconstruct, say, the Gospel of Mark, our earliest gospel. And does he know why we actually date it past the time of 70? Why do we think that Matthew and Luke know and use the Gospel of Mark and make changes to it to also show that they're not witnesses to the events? Why do we think those sorts of things? Does he know that? Does he engage with that? Does he publish in that area? Or does he take the fringe position and just assumes the tradition that this was written by Mark and then pretends that that's good enough? For Bible scholars, that hasn't been good enough for well over a century.
And that's because Bible scholars, many of them have a huge axe to grind.
That is all true.
Bible scholars
many
are
of them
Christians.
many of them claim to be Christians. Many of them claim to be Christians.
So they're not the right kind of Christian because they disagree with you.
And here it is. Yes.
That's
honestly, that's
the Bible.
what
the
it boils
Bible
down
gives
to.
the definition of what a Christian is. The Bible gives a very clear definition of what a Christian is, and if you don't adhere to that, you are not a Christian.
And Joe, there are over 40,000 denominations of Christianity, and the other 39,999 of them are looking at your Christianity and saying he's not a real Christian, he's doing it wrong because the Bible says blah 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 blah. Like that is really what it boils down to
at
here.
The very beginning of the
this.
Bible and at the very end of the Bible, there is a curse put on anybody who adds to or takes away from the Word of God. That curse is reiterated 2 other times in the Old Testament. And so those people who come along and say, oh, this is not written by Mark, the people who claimed it was, this is not written by Paul, this is all a fabrication. Those people are liars, and they come under the curse of Genesis and Revelation as well as
Congratulations,
Deuteronomy.
Joe. You
And they
have
are not
nothing but
Christians.
dogma. Thanks. That's
You
all you
just,
got.
yeah, it's a
Dogma.
dogma position. That's also,
So
by the way,
I'm just telling
that's
you
why
those people are not
just so you know,
Christians.
Joe.
I'm just telling you why.
Just so you
Well,
know, Joe.
I can
That's
also tell you
also
that's also why you're going to be wrong, because you're only going to listen to people that tell you what you want to hear, not what is the best evidence by the best experts. You will choose who is an expert and prop them up because they agree with what you already assumed to be true. I did not do that. When I read Adler's book, that was a completely new thesis for me, and I looked at the evidence and I was like, wow, this completely changes my mind. I had no idea this is how the evidence was laid out. That's what I try to do every day I explore this subject. Joe, why don't you do the same thing?
So I'm very happy to argue with you about the dates of the New Testament. I'm
Not
very
argue.
confident
What
that
do you
those
do
were
to
written
explore
when
to change your mind? What do you do to challenge your beliefs?
I talk to and listen to podcasts like yours. I listen to Gutsick Gibbon. I try to not stay in my my own little bubble, but I can't help but call out when I see things that I think are patently false. And so of course I'm listening to Christian scholars as well, but I'm not in an echo chamber by any stretch. I'm not a well-educated person. That's true.
You absolutely are in an echo chamber because of what you just said a second ago. You literally what you just said a second ago.
This call.
Yes, but especially what you just said a second
really
ago about how
if you guys
there's
think
this
that
curse
I'm,
in the Bible
narrow-minded.
that
I'm really not.
I'm going to continue talking. I didn't call you narrow-minded. You are continuing to put words in our mouth in order to avoid the actual conversations being had with you. What you just said a second ago was about this whole thing about how there's this curse in the Bible, and that's how I know what a true Christian is, because people who say this and that, by the by, Joe, every single bit of that is exactly why Islam is true, because it has to be translated and interpreted this exact way, and anybody who changes it even a little bit is doing a disservice to the word of God, and blah, blah, blah. They say the exact same fucking thing. And there's still different sects of Islam. Your argument
is ridiculous because I'm talking about an internal critique. I'm not verifying that the Bible is true by talking about
so that's the thing, though.
I'm saying that those people who claim that they are believers in the Bible are not believing the Bible because they blank out these specific words of Christ.
I did the same thing you just said, and you're still accusing me of misinterpreting what you're saying. Joe, I would love for you to actually have the conversation that's being had with you, but it fucking 49 miserable minutes in, and you're still just telling us what you believe with no real backing. And then every time we come at you with a reason to doubt what you're saying, you're either just dismissing it out of hand as ridiculous, or deliberately, if we're being very honest, deliberately misinterpreting what we're saying into something stupid. It sucks, dude. Go ahead, Aaron. What were you going to say?
I was also going to say, if he keeps trying to cite the Bible for the Bible, while the scholars are coming in and saying, hey, this verse here may not actually be original. If you are going to use something added by people to justify what the people said to claim it's from God, you are then being circular. The scholars are coming in and saying, hey, let's actually figure out where these things come from, rather than assume what we have as it is actually what people claim it to be. Because again, that's an argument. That is a dogma. Let's go by where the evidence points. And just because the evidence points differently than what you want, or the expert consensus is different from what you want, doesn't give you good grounds to just accuse everyone who knows 10 times more than you do, 10 times more than I do about these things, of being ignorant, anti-Christian, what have yous. Again, I'm literally going to be going to the Society of Biblical Literature in a couple weeks, and I'll go and ask people here, hey, how many of you here are on a crusade against Christianity? I don't think too many people are going to be putting their hands up. How many of you Christians here are not real Christians? How many do you think are going to put their hands up? All right.
Well, they haven't talked to Joe. That's the problem.
Yeah,
Joe knows what a real Christian is.
No, his
and only Joe.
Well,
yes, there's the lawyer and Joe. Those are the real Christians.
Yes.
Yeah, just at the end of the day, dude, it's been almost an hour, and you keep just saying what you believe, Aaron keeps giving you good evidence. It's not my area of expertise, but I've given you examples and like context from my background in archaeology that I think matters. And you're either just completely dismissing it or just trying to spin it into something else. And when all of that fails, you keep just falling back on you mad bro. It's fucking boring. So we'll bring it back for the last second here. Anything, is this resonating with you at all? That this is just a shitty way to have a conversation, at least?
Oh, hello. Sorry, I didn't. Am I unmuted now?
Yes.
I just said you were.
Okay, there was some sort of a catch or a delay. Yeah, no, I mean, I think if you run the clock back and see who's been doing the most listening, that's overwhelmingly me.
Well, yes, because you called into our show to ask us questions. That's also true. You called into our show to ask you questions, and people who actually have experience in these areas have been trying to pass along that experience, and you've been saying, yeah, but I know some lawyer, and then saying you mad bro every time we get a little bit passionate about something that we literally dedicate time and energy to studying rather than being in whatever echo chamber you're in that you deny. It just sucks. It just sucks.
Okay. Could you provide me a little bit more evidence for why you think the Gospels were written 2 centuries later or whatever? Not 2 centuries. I don't know what you said. Well after.
I think you should call
AD 70.
I think you should call in when Justin from Deconstruction Zone is on as well, because he, I believe, has a master's in specifically studying the Bible and can probably give you a lot more evidence about that. As for right now, it's been 53 minutes. Aaron, do you want to take a swig of that, or do you want to, bring the show to a close?
Oh, all right. So very quickly, when I mentioned stuff about the Old Testament, especially when it comes to the Exodus conquest narratives, I would still probably point you to The Bible Unearthed by Finkelstein and Silberman. It's an older book at this point now, and by older, I mean it's from like the 2000s, but it's still, from what I can tell, pretty much the consensus position in the broad strokes about that. You can also look at works by Bill Deaver that come a little bit after that, but again, same basic thing, saying the Exodus story, probably not true, at least not the story as we see in the Bible. Maybe there is some mini version of that is plausible. That's probably where you'll see there. For the New Testament, Bart Ehrman is probably going to do the most to say what the consensus position is and some of the reasons for that. Get a large Bible commentary. They're going to have lots of details and notes for those sorts of things. Those would be the main resources you could go to that immediately come to mind. So you can see that you can at least know what the consensus position is, know some of the basics of what the arguments are, and then see where you can go from there.
There we go.
Okay, I will definitely check in. Who was the author of The Bible Unearthed? Could you repeat that name?
Yes, Finkelstein and Silberman. Israel Finkelstein has been... he's kind of a celebrity in the archaeology world. He's been working for the Israel Antiquity Authority for decades, and he's kind of, I don't want to say the boss, but when he gives a talk, that's where most of the other people go to listen.
Yeah. Anyway, with that, Joe, do you know when the train was invented? The steam train?
I do not.
1804. And before that, people used to run wagon caravans on your mom. Have an awesome rest of your day, dude. Bye-bye. Fucking so dumb that fucking just every single time you're met with like actual evidence of like why your claims are stupid. Oh no, you sound insecure. I can tell by the tone of your voice. Why are you so mad? Oh my God, you're so insecure. Oh my God, you guys can't help yourself. Oh my God. Just such fucking lazy troll bro bullshit to try to get away from the fact that you have no fucking leg to stand on. You have no serious argument beside my favorite podcaster said something, this fucking lawyer said something, and I have no idea what the actual scholarly literature says. So I'm just, but these guys aren't real Christians, and I can tell because I'm the realiest Christian. I really know. Blah, 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 blah. Fuck off. It's so fucking lazy, and then you come in being a troll on top of it. Fucking, we were very polite for an hour. Very polite.
And I have to say, when it comes to echo chambers, This is the sign that you're in an echo chamber when you are taught this sort of defense mechanism. When they come in and they show passion, oh, that shows that they're actually deep down sinners and they're trying to hide from the truth. It's like, yep, this is the sort of stuff that people say to insulate the group, and that is fundamentally what Christian apologetics is. It is literally, we must defend this position at all costs. And keep the group safe from the scary outside world. That has been, unfortunately, the history of this sort of thing for decades, if not centuries. I've actually looked a little bit at the history of especially evangelical scholarship, and that is ultimately what it's built for. James Barr wrote this book called The Fundamentalists back in the 70s, and it's like, literally, these folks create literature to inculcate and protect themselves from what the wider conversation is, give their in-group the ammunition to stay in the group. And that's when you do that, you create a bubble.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me is like I brought up Kurt Wise as an example of why someone might be dishonest about what they're studying and like just say, hey, I don't care what the fucking evidence says. And like over and over, I tried to bring that up as like a cautionary thing. And to say like, hey, it's not reasonable to say, well, these people had no reason to say something that was against the evidence. Yes, they fucking do. And like lots of people do. Here's a very well-trained fucking scientist who does, right? And then rather than taking that to heart and saying, okay, maybe my sources are bad. Maybe I should look at like what other people are saying and why they're saying it. Like Joe just continued to be the next Kurt Wise and say, I don't care what your experts say. Here's a lawyer who says something different and I know what a real Christian is. Like, that's so fucking lame. That sucks so bad. Anyway,
if I may give hope though, to the audience, it's worth reminding, what is my PhD in? Is it in biblical studies? Is it in folklore? No. I am self-taught primarily in these things, but I've also tried to do it professionally. So I actually go to the professional conferences, hang out with the professional people, publish in their journals as much as I can. I am trying to actually go and do things at the expert level rather than just be the one jerk lawyer who says they know better than everybody else. And I ignore the last 200 plus years of careful study on these things. Even if I disagree with them, I at least need to know what the argument is, so I'm not just arguing with the paper bag I drew on my hand.
The whole conversation is an argument someone has with their soap bottles in the shower. That though, that's the end of our show. It's been a fun one. We had all great calls and then that, but like, fuck man, it was kind of fun anyway. I hope you enjoyed it. Aaron, anything for us before we proceed to close? One last thought, anything?
The last thought is, patrons, you're awesome. Crew, moderators, screeners, you're awesome. You're the reason the show continues to go on. Forrest, thank you for being awesome tonight.
Thank you, I do my best. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Have an awesome rest of your day. Never stop learning. Bye.